Hi everyone, Happy New Year and welcome to Deep Geek Live. This is my first live stream of the new year. I'm really excited by what we're going to be discussing and my special guest who I will introduce in just one moment. We're going to be looking at what's coming up this year, the TV shows, the movies, maybe also a little bit about the books as well coming up. But first of all, before we get into that, I just wanted to say I hope you had a fantastic break, a wonderful happy Christmas and rested new year if you celebrate, and also a personal thank you if you were here for my charity live stream just before Christmas. It was in aid of a fantastic cause, and I'm delighted that we raised over $1,400. So thank you so much. This is an incredibly wonderful, giving, caring community, and you blow me away every single time. So thank you for that. But I wanted to introduce my guest today, who is somebody who's been on this channel maybe even a couple of years ago now, since the last time he was on, but he is an expert in all things geekery. I would like you to say hello to James Hancock. James, welcome.
Thank you so much for the invite. And I'm just going to, I guess, contradict what you said. I'm not an expert in all things because when I watch your channel and I see your expertise on certain topics, as well as the expertise of your audience, I'm like, whoa, I've still got a lot to learn. So I refer to myself more as like a generalist and jack of all trades. And the expertise, I'll defer to you when it comes to anything related to GRRM or Tolkien or any of the other subjects that you tackle so well.
Well, thank you so much. For those who do not know, James has a YouTube channel, Geekin' with James Hancock. I think you do a podcast. What else?
The podcast is Wrong Reel. Podcast is more about film history, and the YouTube channel is more contemporary film and television, that sort of thing. And so I kind of have two different brands, but there's some overlap and some bleed effect. Recently, I had the filmmaker Brian Trenchard Smith, who made all these astonishing Australian, like basically exploitation films in the 70s and 80s. I was like, you know what? This interview is going to go on both platforms because it fits. So yeah, I have no hard and fast rules, but I try to create as much content as I can on the two platforms.
Excellent. Well, what we're going to do today is we're going to do an overview of everything that's coming up this year. We obviously can't cover everything, but I've said a few times in the past, over the last few months, I think that we are entering a golden age, particularly for high fantasy TV, a golden age of excellent TV and movies. The kinds of things that we cover on this channel that we love are just exploding right now. And so there are huge amounts of things coming up. James, I know you've got a lot of things you want to talk about, but let's start with the thing that I've got behind me here. What came on IMDb gave this the most anticipated TV show of the year. They did a poll. Apparently it came top. House of the Dragon. What are your thoughts on House of the Dragon first? I know that you're not the details man on Fire and Blood, but I do know that you enjoy it. So
I've got a copy of Fire and Blood right here, and it is well loved and well thumbed. I just get a little intimidated on your channel because I know there are some legit experts that watch your show, but I absolutely adored the book. I just fell into it when it came out. I'm going to reread it just prior to the release of the show, just to make sure I'm up to speed on all the details. And I feel like the upper bound limits or the potential are obviously astonishing because, as you well know, it's written more like a history book. There's just so much lore and so much text and so many characters. You could do like 20 seasons of television just from that first book if you wish to. I have a feeling they'll probably fast track a lot of it to really get to the Dance of the Dragons sooner rather than later, because they just won't be able to resist because it is the world of TV. But I, like many people, was not entirely in awe of the final season, but enough time has passed now where I'm willing to set aside whatever grievances I may have had at that time. And yeah, when it comes to fantasy and film and television, nothing has my interest, or nothing has more of my interest than this upcoming show this coming year.
Yeah, I don't think I could agree more. I'm really excited about this. For me, it's vying with the Lord of the Rings TV show, but we've actually seen something of this. So this is what is sort of uppermost in my mind right now. Just while I sort of start off on this, in terms of super chats and things, thank you so much, Lord Luke Lightbringer, great name. Thank you for the super sticker. What I'm doing is I'm collecting these up, and I will answer all of the super chats and get into as much of the chat and questions from my patrons after this initial chat through. So rather than dotting about all over the place, I thought what we'll do is we'll sort of go through show by show with James, and then we'll try and pick up as many of these questions you want. So keep the questions coming, and we will pick up on them in a moment. Yeah, so the only thing I would just sort of pick up on that, I do wonder, in terms of, you were saying you think they might fast track into the Dance of the Dragons. I think season 1 they won't. That's my personal take. I think season 1.
I hope they don't. I hope they save it for like season 5. Like, yeah, there's all the time in the world to get there.
I have a feeling it'll be faster than that. But I think season 1, I think, will be the build-up. We've got characters cast for young Alicent Hightower, for young Rhaenyra. We've got a lot of younger characters. We know we've got they've signed up Paddy Considine, who's an amazing actor, to be King Viserys, and they're not going to want to waste him. So I have a feeling we will get most of, if not all of season 1 is going to be the build-up, and then the rest of the seasons will be the actual dance. That's just my gut instinct on where we're going with that one. In terms of the sort of the actors, I'm sure you've seen a few of them. You've got Matt Smith, who's been there, Olivia,
which might be pitch perfect casting. I mean, it's that's
I would be interested in your take.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite characters from the novel, and I just loved how arrogant he was, and how cunning he was, and how ruthless he was. I feel like he's a true Targaryen. There are all kinds of Targaryens, but for me, a true Targaryen has to be a conqueror, has to be a world beater. And so we saw him, I guess, in Last Night in Soho. Is that the new Edgar Wright film, where he basically got to play a bit more of a bastard? I like seeing charismatic actors go to the dark side, and I feel like it's a lot of times actors can share their best qualities when they get to kind of revel in some diabolical villainy. And so I'm really excited about what he's going to bring to the table.
Well, this is Daemon Targaryen, and this is a character George R. R. Martin clearly loves. He wrote a novella before Fire and Blood. He wrote a novella, The Rogue Prince, about him, and he described him in these fantastic terms as being, the most brilliant but horrific person around at the time. So he should be divisive. I'm with you. I like the casting of Matt Smith. I think when it first came out, people were a little bit uncertain, but he's got that charisma that he showed through things like Doctor Who, the sort of the upper class princely thing, obviously in The Crown, but a lot of his other stuff, he has got this kind of dark side he can bring
100%.
To it. So I am really looking forward to that.
Can I ask you a quick super chat? What are your predictions on Fire and Blood Part 2? Because I saw some quote that it won't come out until after A Dream of Spring. I'm like, well, I'm not expecting A Dream of Spring ever to materialize. So I hope Fire and Blood Part 2 will come a little sooner than that.
It won't, I'm pretty sure. So George R. R. Martin, I mean, he does change his mind on these things a lot, but he last year sometime he did give his list of priorities in terms of his writing. The top priority, he said, obviously, is The Winds of Winter. After that, he's thinking maybe he'll do another Dunk and Egg. He has got one at least half written, and that's only a novella length, so okay. And then he wants to do A Dream of Spring, and after that, Fire and Blood Part 2. So I think I'm one of the people most confident that The Winds of Winter is going to come out at some point soon.
But we're coming up in 11 years since the last book.
Yeah, well, I know it's a long old time.
I was a considerably younger human being the last time I got to read a new book at A Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah, well, Game of Thrones hadn't started when the last book came out. That's the context we have here. That's how long ago it was. But even as optimistic as I am, Fire and Blood Part 2, it's not going to be. If we do see it, it's not going to be for at least a decade. Is the way?
At which point he'll be, what, 81, 82?
Exactly. So draw your own conclusions from that one, I think. And he's yeah, I don't know. The tone of his not a blog posts has changed over the last few months, which maybe gives me a bit of hope, but I don't know.
Could you
I'm not going to get
live
into that.
with a Brandon Sanderson situation, like when Robert Jordan basically, after his demise, kind of passed the baton to a writer to kind of put a nice bow on his work?
I don't know who though. That's the thing. So for the Brandon Sanderson situation, for those who do not know, The Wheel of Time, Robert Jordan wrote this epic fantasy series. He got, I don't know, 11 books in,
I've
I
got
think.
the first 6 right here, but yeah, I've read them all.
Excellent. So they're really good, great fun. We'll talk about Wheel of Time in just one moment, actually. But so he sadly died, not quite finishing this fantasy epic, and then Brandon Sanderson took his notes and just finished it off, turned it into the last 3 novels, and that was generally considered a success. What Brandon Sanderson did, interestingly, was that he said, "I'm not going to try and write like Robert Jordan. I'm not going to try and I'm going to write like me. I'm going to do it with the notes. I'm going to try and honor the story that was there, but I'm not going to try and change my own style." And I think that is harder for someone like George R.R. Martin because of the way that the A Song of Ice and Fire is written from different characters' perspectives. Each chapter reads slightly differently. I think that'll be a lot harder, and I don't know. Yes, I'm sure there'll be somebody else.
And finding a writer who's good enough for the job, but who also is willing to put their own ambitions on hold while they write all that text, because you basically are giving up 3 or 4 or 5 years of your life where you could be writing your own A Song of Ice and Fire level event, and you're basically putting your vision in service of another. That is a hard person to find.
Absolutely, and added to which, we've seen the backlash when people didn't like the ending of Game of Thrones, the TV show. If the people don't like the ending of A Song of Ice and Fire, the books, the backlash will also be quite strong, I'm sure. But let's move on to A Wheel of Time. Actually, well, we're on that kind of we had season 1 of Wheel of Time that happened just on the lead up to Christmas. Did you watch it? Did you enjoy it, first of all?
I was less keen on it than others, and I've stayed totally out of this really, I guess, just venomous culture war that's been kind of erupting over it. But Wheel of Time means a lot to me. When I was in high school, my senior year, I read the first 6 books, fell into them, never fully reemerged, waited about a decade, came back to the series, read up to, I think, about the 10th book at that time. And then a few years ago, finally came back, finished all the Brandon Sanderson books. I've got a lot of love and affection for that series, particularly the first 6, which are some of my favorite fantasy books. And as I was watching it, the chemistry between the characters that I was craving, I guess the experience that I was craving was missing, but I was like, you know what? People are loving the show. I'm not going to vomit my bile onto the internet telling them that they're wrong. If people love the show, awesome. I wish I was having that experience. So I was less keen on Wheel of Time. I wish they'd done more of a situation like with The Expanse, where you really try and get a show that's very closely mirrors the source material. But if people, I know it's the #1 show that Amazon's ever created. Clearly somebody loves it. So more power to them. I'm not going to kind of spoil their fun by adding on my list of grievances. So I didn't do any reviews or anything like that. I'm just kind of staying out of that battle.
I think that's fair enough. I personally, I enjoyed it. I didn't think it was right up there with the greatest adaptations that I've sort of seen, but I think one view I had in watching it was actually the scenes that I enjoyed the most were the new ones, the ones that weren't in the books, the things that seemed to have the most emotional impact. Maybe I'll try and work through at some point why that might be. Maybe it was that those were the things that matched up to how
also
TV
Jordan's
works
not
as
a
medium.
perfect writer. He could be a little overly long in his approach, and there is the what's that figure of speech people have for like books like 8 through 10, where they call the slog. The slog is real. Like, not all of his books are created equal. So
they're not. But the first 2 or 3, in my view, and I think in many people's views, they are the
Really
best
good.
in terms of the pacing and sort of the characters and the world building. And that was what surprised me. Was I was expecting that in season 1 they did do some world building, but the things which worked best for me, like the season when you get the I've forgotten the character's name, but the warder who died and they're all beating their chests. That scene worked really well for me, as well as when Nynaeve's power coming out with the healing. That was a TV show only scene that worked really well for me. That as a whole, I kind of liked. It didn't ever ascend to the heights for me of something like the first few seasons of Game of Thrones. Not many things do, so that's not really
Those
a
first few
fair
seasons of Game
comparison.
of Thrones are the high watermark, the kind of like the bar by which all other fantasy shows can be judged.
But we're looking forward to 2022 now. They have they've already committed to season 2. They are
I
filming
think it's even been
season 2.
shot. I think it's in post-production already. So
It's already has it well. So I think we can expect this in this year.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all if November 2022 you see season 2. Amazon has been looking for a Game of Thrones level success. I don't know how they measure that because obviously it's a different business model than HBO back when they first launched Game of Thrones. But I think they've been very pleased by the overall, even if the reception's divided, the total eyeballs, they're in the eyeballs business and there are a lot of eyeballs looking at it. And the beautiful thing is no matter what I might have felt about the show or whatever my misgivings might be, some people who are very young now, who are brand new to the Wheel of Time, will pick up these books and fall into them like so many millions of others. So I will always regard that as a net positive if more people are being invited into that world or possibly even launching their own fantasy careers. Brandon Sanderson was a Wheel of Time fanatic before he became a very successful fantasy author in his own right.
And what do you're clearly a big fan. What are you expecting from season 2? Season 1 broadly was book 1. It missed out some big chunks that I'm assuming are going to be in season 2, and also brought forward a few things that were in book 2. What are you expecting from season 2?
I think they'll fast track Matt's storyline. I mean, if you want the real Matt experience, you almost have to get to book 5, Fires of Heaven, before Matt is the Matt that we all know and love in terms of all of his strategic knowledge, the weapons that he carries, his outfit. Like he was a work in progress where everybody thinks of him as the finished product, but everybody wants to see that finished product. So I think Matt will be fast tracked in terms of his overall development. That would be one of my only predictions because they're not going to do 14 seasons of the Wheel of Time and some of that stuff will be accelerated.
Yeah, and I've forgotten his name now. Rafe Judkins, that's the guy, the showrunner, has himself come out and said exactly the same as you. Is that the sort of the mid to second half of the series is a lot slower, and so he's not planning on making a season per book for later on. That will get squashed down. So yeah, I'm expecting roughly a book and a bit for the first 2 or 3 seasons, then we'll start accelerating through it, and then finally when we get down to the end, assuming they go all the way to the end, then we'll probably slow back down again for
those last 3 books could all easily be a season apiece. Brandon Sanderson, you could bludgeon someone to death. I mean, those are doorstopper books. They are big, and so they could easily, I think you could truncate everything basically from like a Path of Daggers through like Knife of Dreams and kind of condense that a tad. But the first 6 books, they all deserve a season, and the last 3 books all deserve a season. I mean, Lord of Chaos, which might be my favorite of all 6, the ending of it is so good. I mean, if they can get to the end of Lord of Chaos and get it right, it will be like a Red Wedding level event in the world of television. They need to lay the groundwork and they need to earn it and they need to get there. But yeah, that the battle at the end of Lord of Chaos is one of the most exhilarating reading experiences I've ever had the privilege of having.
Excellent. Well, there you have it, everyone. Hold on for like maybe 3 or 4 more seasons.
Absolutely.
Okay, so in my view, yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. I think you're probably bang on with the timing there. This is if it's coming to an end of filming and post-production now, then it will be ready, even if I think last time around they had a few months, maybe 5 or 6 months for post-production. They won't want to be doing it at the same time as Lord of the Rings, which we'll talk about in just one second, which is starting on the 2nd of September.
Yeah.
Probably they will push it on the other side of that. That makes sense to me for that to sort of follow on for them after that. I think this they were clearly very happy with it, and I think that they've already announced a whole load of casting for it. This is probably going to be something they're going to be sticking with for quite some time. But it is also, I think, undeniable that one of the reasons, or one of the things they're doing with this, is to prepare the way for the Lord of the Rings TV show, which is massive budget. This is the biggest budget TV show ever. They are keeping this incredibly close to their chest. We do not even know the name of this TV show yet. That is how tight it is.
If you could pick the name, just as a diehard fan, what would you call it?
I don't know. I think they have to have Lord of the Rings : something, just because the name is so big.
Tolkien's Second Age would be more accurate. I think because when people hear Lord of the Rings, they're like, "Where's Aragorn?" It's like, well, he's not in this, and it's like I think it sets up unrealistic expectations for people who just love film and television and don't give a damn about the books. Lord of the Rings is one of the most beloved film trilogies ever made, and I think it just creates a lot of brand confusion, which will possibly lead to a lot of mixed reactions when that first episode drops. People are like, wait, what? Where are the hobbits? Like, I think a lot of people are going to be totally bewildered if they don't prime the audience for what the Second Age entails.
I think they will be doing this, and I think that this is one of the few messages they've been getting out, is this is not a retelling of Lord of the Rings. This is thousands of years earlier. So I think the audience will expect that to be different. And although we haven't had many bits of information about it yet, we have had one shot. That's one picture that they've given us, and delightfully, I did a live stream talking about this at the time, but wonderfully, having just said almost nothing apart from this is about the Second Age, guys, they then gave us a picture not from the Second Age, from thousands of years before that. So, and this is almost certainly, I think, where they're going to start off a long time before the Second Age.
I think like the downfall of Morgoth, to kind of like really like set, almost like the way the Fellowship of the Ring film started with the downfall of Sauron.
Yes. So for us,
that would be fucking epic. Sorry, I don't know if I can cuss. That would be epic. I would be very excited if they did that.
Yeah. Well, for us to understand what presumably this show is going to be about, which is basically the downfall of Numenor and Sauron's role in what's going on there. For us to understand that, we need to understand stuff which happened years earlier, centuries, millennia earlier. So that, I think they will start off back in the past, as you say, what they did in the movies, and they had that fantastic sort of I don't even know how long it felt like. It was
like flying into battle with like dragons like meeting them in the sky. I mean, you could start with like the ultimate fantasy, high fantasy battle royale if they wish to. They've got them. They clearly have the budget.
They do, and I think they've got limitless budget for this. That's the impression I get, is that they spent $250 million on the rights alone, and they can spend whatever they like after this. So, but what are your, as someone, I know you love Tolkien, you're perhaps not as deep into the weeds as I am on this one. What's your expectation from what you've been sort of picking up, and what are your hopes for this?
Well, because what we know about the Second Age is a little thinner versus the First Age. Obviously, if you wanted to do a show about the First Age, the Silmarillion could keep you busy for a good long while, but the Second Age is really only like the last 40 or 50 pages of the Silmarillion, and I love it, and I've read it a couple of times, and I enjoy the hell out of it. Because less is known, they have a lot more rope to hang themselves with, but also if they stick the landing, they get to claim a lot more of the credit because they're having to invent so much new material. Like, I love those games. What were those two RPGs that came out? Like Shadows of Mordor, and Shadow of War, I think was the other one. Yeah. But anyway, they brought in a lot of cool stuff and really made it feel true to the Lord of the Rings, but it was a brand new storytelling experience. And I thought those games were just absolutely killer. So I think a game like that shows the potential. But I always worry about a giant staff of writers who's not the equal of Tolkien. Once again, it's hard to fill a room with writers who are the equal of Tolkien. And so we shall see what we shall see. Obviously, what I would love is like the ultimate dark adult fantasy capturing the Second Age and all of its grim, grimy glory, because there are passages in there that are so depressing and so bleak where all hope is failing. And I feel like they could really go to the dark side with this, but is that what the audience around the world wants? The Second Age was so grim across the board for the most part, except for the occasional victories by the Numenorians. But would that be a hit show? I don't know if the show that I would want would be the hit that Amazon needs to justify what they've invested.
Well, I mean, I think if this is focusing in on Numenor, as it appears to be, then I think we have got this story emerging of the heroes. So we get Isildur, that we all know, that guy, him and his dad and his family, and the sort of the faithful few. They are there in Numenor, just holding out for what is good and right. And
while all these like sacrifices are going on, like all like the black magic, when Sauron's having these like the brief descriptions Tolkien gives us of just how dark things got on the island of Numenor. It's like, whoa, Tolkien, give us more of that. Like you've been keeping that stuff kind of tucked away.
Yeah, and so I think this is where we will get it. We will get the things. We'll get the beauty of Tolkien. There's always beauty in Tolkien. He loves life, and we'll see the elves, and we'll see the high and wonderful places. And Numenor was the height of human civilization, the height of technology of humanity, the greatest art. We should see fantastic, beautiful things.
Yeah, the greatest navy the world has ever seen.
Exactly, but corruption within it, and then some people standing up for what is right. So this should feel, as Tolkien does, like this is a battle of good and evil. We shouldn't be in as much doubt as we are in some other franchises about who are the good guys and who are the bad guys. It will get a bit more complicated. There are going to be multi-layered characters, but I think that it's going to be very clear we've got two sides on this. And
seeing them make Sauron bend the knee when they come in, and even Sauron realizes, I'm not prepared for the Numenorians, and he bends the knee, almost like when the Targaryens go to the north and force Ned Stark's ancestor to bend the knee. I mean, that's a major moment. And then talk about the ultimate season cliffhanger, Sauron being taken as a captive back to the island. And we, of course, all know that he's playing a long game and he's going to ruin it from within. But I just hope that they use everything that's available from Tolkien and then flesh it out, as opposed to discarding any of it. There's so precious little that he wrote about the Second Age. I just hope that all of it, one way or another, makes it into the show, because why waste what's already been put on paper that works so well?
Yes, and the way that the Tolkien estate tends to work with this, that we've seen this time again, is that the rule seems to be, if something is written down there by Tolkien in one of the published works, you cannot go away from it. That has to be there. You cannot change it. There's no unlike other things, you cannot just suddenly change a little bit of the lore or the history. That is sacrosanct. But where there are gaps, where there are holes in what he said, where he hasn't described a certain thing, he doesn't tell you what a person looks like, you can do what you want with that.
And there's centuries of gaps in what he wrote on the Second Age. So
there is. This is over 3,000 years worth.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to be focusing in on the last few decades. That's my feel. I think we're going to have a build up to it. I think we're going to see a huge amount of the history so we understand the context. But this is going to be focusing in on that last few years of Numenor. Okay, let's move on. So we've talked already about three of the big things. Let's actually, while we're on the subject of Lord of the Rings, a movie. I don't know how up with this you are, but the rights, it's very complicated, the rights to Tolkien. But they appear roughly, as far as we can understand, to be split between Amazon, who hold the rights to make TV shows,
and Warner Brothers, yeah.
Exactly, who hold the rights to make films, to make movies. And they have announced, and I'd love to know if you've heard any more about this or if you have any thoughts on this, they have announced that they're making an anime, the War of the Rohirrim, and that's it. Do you know any more about this? When it might be coming out? How long does it take to make an anime movie? Do you know?
I love anime. I've been an anime freak since like the late 80s. And I love some of the things we've seen over on Netflix in recent years. Like the Castlevania series was so goddamn good. I was like, whoa, y'all are kind of almost delivering above and beyond even my wildest expectations. So the filmmakers are there. And also another great one on Netflix recently was Super Crooks, based on the Mark Miller comic. I feel like there's so much talent in the world of anime. If they get the right team, it could be one of the coolest damn cartoons ever made. And I will be there on day one. I love animation. I've even done some producing. I've produced a couple of animated shorts, and I produced one animated feature here in New York. So I've got a very soft spot for animation. So I will be rooting for it hard, but all that I know is that they started doing the casting last summer, and this is all stuff you can readily find on Wikipedia. And I see no release date, but Warner Brothers will be putting it in the theater, which makes me think that the production value will be above and beyond what we typically see on some of these streaming platforms.
Okay, so this isn't just going to be like the equivalent of like a Netflix film that sort of comes out. This is actually going to be out there, available for us to go to cinemas to watch. That's
which does make me worry, because America has a very troubled history with adult animation in the theater. For whatever reason, if it's kid friendly, they go in droves to make hundreds of millions of dollars. There are precious few examples of animation with a more adult sensibility doing really well, at least in the United States, which has always been a source of frustration to me. But it does, but at least from what I'm reading on Wikipedia, Warner Brothers is intending this to be a proper theatrical release. And now that 2021 is over, they're not even doing that day and date release with HBO Max and theaters anymore. I think it'll get preferential treatment and go to the theaters first. So, but I don't like the idea of franchises being divided under different rooftops. That kind of thing drives me crazy. I feel like every fictional setting deserves a cohesive, comprehensive strategy where everybody's playing nicely together and you're all kind of going in the same direction. Once again, when it comes to brand confusion, it's just going to muddy the waters in a lot of ways. But for me, on a personal level, I'm hoping that I absolutely hit a home run with it. Whoops, did I disconnect, or did you disconnect?
You did. I don't know. It was either you or me, but we're both back now.
All right, beautiful. I'm blaming it on you.
Please do. I've spoken a few times in previous live streams about the context of this in terms of what it's going to be covering. This is a story. It's a really good story that Tolkien has there. Sort of, if you have to sort of dig around for it, it's not in the main text.
Yeah, it's in the appendices of the Return of the King.
Yeah, so you can find it there, and it will make for an interesting story. I think the thing that I've talked to a few of the other Tolkien geeks about is the extent to which they're going to try and make the main character, Helm Hammerhand, a hero, because when you read the text, he comes across as being we could charitably say hot-headed, rather uncharitably we could say that he's a cold-blooded murderer. So he's not a straightforward character, and it will be really interesting to see how much they're willing to embrace that kind of nuance. This is the kind of story Tolkien was very keen on, just telling the story and not saying this is like you have to take this moral from it or whatever. He just wanted us to be able to take whatever sort of applicability from it that we wanted to or we saw there, and much like mythology.
And that's part of his genius. Applicability is a wonderful, beautiful way to describe it. You can infer so much from his stories in terms of ethics, morals, etc., but he's not shoving it down your throat. And that's part of why, like, teaspoon of sugar makes the medicine go down. Tolkien knew what he was doing.
He absolutely did. Just if you're coming in to this part way through, just so you're aware, I'm going to pick up all of the super chats and questions from my patrons after we've had this initial chat through. James and I chat through the things which are coming up this year. So do keep the questions coming. I will try and pick up. I've been sort of cutting and pasting things frantically in the background while we've been talking. So I've got it all there. So don't worry, I will come back to that. But moderators, thank you so much. Just while I'm talking about this, you do a fantastic job. I hope you all had a fantastic break over Christmas as well. And if you are there watching live, please do go into the chat and give them a little bit of love, because they definitely deserve it. Let's talk, James, about something else that that I cover here on this channel, which is the world of The Witcher. Now, we've obviously just had season 2 of The Witcher. Did you enjoy that? I assume you watched it. Did you?
I liked it a little less than season 1, but one of the things I loved about season 2 is that it encouraged me to go back and reread Blood of Elves just before it came out, which is, I mean, Blood of Elves is a really, really good novel. And I'm always blown away by just how quickly you can rip through. When you think of fantasy novels, you always think of like Robert Jordan, like, oh my God, I'm going to spend like a year of my life fighting and battling my way through this giant tome. Whereas Sapkowski, you can just rip right through this book so fast. And I love the first 2 collections of short stories. And I think that's the reason I liked season 1 a little better, is that there were certain episodes that were really beautiful adaptations of specific stories. Whereas in season 2, that first episode came from the first collection, but I would never declare myself to be a Sapkowski expert because I've only read the first 3 novels, but I've got Time of Contempt and Baptism of Fire ready to go, which I will read before more seasons as they come out. So I would say that I'm actually a fairly recent convert to The Witcher because I played The Witcher 3, fell into it, thought it was a killer RPG. And then when I saw the show was coming, then I started reading the short stories. And so all my knowledge of The Witcher is all from basically like the last 4 or 5 years. I absolutely love and adore the world. But season 2, I kept reading that they were going to adhere so religiously to Blood of Elves and how I think it's Lauren Schmidt-Hisrich who runs the show.
Mm-hmm.
She made all of her writing staff reread Blood of Elves ahead of time. So I was like, oh my God, they're going to really go all in. And then it almost seems like they kind of threw it over their shoulder and just did their own thing. So that I found to be a little frustrating. She had primed me to expect a very different experience just by her comments regarding the text. But she obviously loves and adores Sapkowski, and she's doing the best she can. So I'm always rooting for The Witcher, even if I was not as excited about season 2. I think someone described it as 2 steps forward, 1 step back, which seems pretty fair.
Yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from, the Blood of Elves thing. Actually, the next video I've got coming out on this channel is a comparison of the book and the TV show, because this was, I noticed this in the comments on the videos that I did make on The Witcher, was the amount of book fans who were there going, what have they done? They've changed it, which they have. And I don't think there's any getting around that. I'm not going to do huge spoilers in case some people haven't quite finished the TV show. I've never quite worked out where the spoiler line has to be for a binge it in one go, kind of drop it in one go Netflix thing. But broadly speaking, it starts in the right place. Most of it roughly ends in the right place. But how they get there in the middle is very different. There's a huge amount of new plot. There's a massive new character, and some of the bits of lore and history added to. I won't say changed because Andrzej Sapkowski has left huge gaps deliberately in the world of The Witcher. He has not done an equivalent of the Silmarillion or the World of Ice and Fire. He's not even done an official map of the continent, and he has been very open and saying The Witcher video games, the TV show, they can do what they want. He's actually said to the showrunner,
because the games take place after the book, so the games are
exactly.
like, we can do whatever the hell, and people love those games.
But he has said that he doesn't want a veto. He doesn't want any creative input. He just wants to know in advance what it's going to be, so that if people ask him about it, then he's prepared. So this is a very different approach to something like Tolkien or George R.R. Martin. So I think we have to respect that, but accept the fact that we are moving towards the Witcher TV show being slightly different to the books, not a sort of a like for like adaptation.
Yeah, and Cavill said in an interview that he's always trying to just remind people gently what he loves about the books, because when he got the part, he started ripping through the book. And Cavill's a giant nerd, loves the games. He does his homework. And so when he can, he gently tries to prod them in that direction. So I hope that Cavill, being who Cavill is, will be able to keep the show more or less, vaguely in the realm of the spine of what the books represent.
Yes, and one thing I will say, sort of in defense of the show, is Blood of Elves as a book is not an easy book to adapt to TV if you take a step back and think about it. It's more of a kind of a bridging novel between the short stories and where the main plot is going to go in the novels. There's a huge amount of just sort of training, discussions, chats about stuff. There's not much by way of action. Some of the main characters, Yennefer hardly appears in it.
Yennefer gets like the last 20%. And if you like magic, it's a glorious 20%, but I grew up playing D&D. I love magic systems. I loved her tutorials in magic with Ciri toward the end of the novel, but I totally understand the need for a show to bring a character forward and just remind people, yes, Yennefer is a character and she's one of the stars of the show.
Yeah, and you can't just put that what was on the page onto the screen. Time of Contempt, the next book, it is it's written ironically, given season 1 of The Witcher, in a kind of a slightly weird timelines, but it is a much more self-contained story with a very clear end point and beginning, and that I suspect will be adhered to quite a bit more closely than happened in season 2 and Blood of Elves. But this is not all we have in the Witcher world these days. We're talking about things coming out in 2022, and we know at least one thing coming out, which is Witcher Blood Origin, which is set way back in the history of The Witcher. Are you looking forward to this? What do you know?
I'll definitely watch it. I've been a Michelle Yeoh fan for decades at this point. I first saw her in Police Story 3, aka Super Cop, where she famously rode a motorcycle onto a moving train, one of the craziest stunts that I've ever seen. So I count myself in her camp. But when it comes to her work, I defer more towards like her crazy, like late 80s or mid 80s action movies. There's just one called Yes, Madam, where if people want to see Michelle Yeoh as a young lady doing things that are just awe-inspiring, she and Cynthia Rothrock did one of the craziest action movies that's ever been shot, and it's directed by Corey Ewan, and I highly recommend it. So I think sometimes people overlook the fact that she's just got decades of great work behind her because she's been so huge as of late. But I'll definitely have a look. I mean, I love all the weird black magic that's involved in making Witcher. So to see a show where the very first Witcher gets created and kind of unlocking some of the secrets, I'll be curious. I do worry, though, that they have less Sapkowski material to work with. So once again, they have a lot of rope to hang themselves with. But I want every fantasy show to be the best goddamn fantasy show ever made. But I'm also a cynic where I realize that that's not realistic. And so I try to keep my expectations modest.
Yeah. So what we've got here is a show which, as you say, is going to be almost completely original. But this is deliberately trying to fill in the gaps in the history and lore in the world of The Witcher. So what we're going to see is why and how were the Witchers first created, hopefully, and that is going to be a massive shift in our understanding of what's there. The Witchers sort of we get a few lines of like background and history of them, but not huge amounts, and hopefully also a little bit more about the conjunction of the spheres, which again we get little bits about, but this is the epochal moment in the Witcher universe where humans and monsters and magic, everything just kind of swarms across into the world. We don't know all of the details about what and why and how.
And how the elves went into a state of decline. I mean, there's some great passages in Blood of Elves where they're talking about how there was that war where a lot of the younger elves got involved. And while elves are long-lived, I never quite know how to pronounce it, but anyway, they live a long time. They can only breed when they're young. And so while you still have a lot of elves that are around, they're effectively sterile because they're like, centuries old. It'll be interesting to see kind of the elves in their prime before they go into their state of decline, as we see them in seasons 1 and 2 of the show.
Yes, exactly. And this is actually one of the wonderful things about the background, the history of the elves, is that they are a doomed nation. This is the way that Andrei Sapkowski does present them, that they, as you say, they don't have a hope for the future anymore. They did, but now it's gone. And that's if you've watched the TV show, you'll know what I mean about the sort of the chances of new elves being born as being really important to them. And I think this is one of the kind of the feels that you get from season 2, was they were trying to show that. They're trying to bring us, the viewers, into that without just giving us a whole load of history. They were trying to help us to understand what was going on.
And of course, they can breed with humans, but then once again, then you're thinning the blood, and it's like, well, are they even still elves at that point? So,
exactly. Okay, so we've got that. Do you think, just off the top of your head, do you think we will get Witcher, or when do you think we will get Witcher season 3?
It wouldn't surprise me if they wait until 2 years from now, because we had 2 years between seasons 1 and 2. It's a giant show. I prefer that they take their time and try and get it right. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if they adhere to a schedule that we've seen thus far, and they'll use the Blood Origin as a place fill. I love the fact that it is a wonderful, beautiful thing seeing fantasy so much in vogue, and it's almost like we're getting spoiled where we're like, well, I like this and I don't like that. Whereas once upon a time, I would watch any fantasy show because there was so precious little of it. What it's reminded me of a little bit is like the 1980s, where you had so many kind of like Beastmaster and Conan ripoffs, and not all of them are good, but it was a glorious time to be a fantasy fan because you had so much stuff to look forward to, whether it's the Sword and the Sorcerer or whatever the case might be. And so I just hope that 10 years from now, we're going to look back on this period and be like, well, look, not every fantasy show worked, but we got this and we got this. Or like I'm wearing a t-shirt for Spine of Night, which is this great rotoscoped dark adult fantasy cartoon, which came out last year. There are going to be little iconic moments in the history of the fantasy genre that when we look back on this period, we will remember it fondly.
Yeah, I agree. This is, I think, the thing that I was looking forward to when I was much younger, when we would actually be able to have the budgets, the special effects to actually make everything work. It's even in Game of Thrones, they're building up to the point where they could have dragons and fights between dragons, and now we're at a stage where, of course, everyone can do that almost. So this is we're now in the future, which I am really excited about. But you mentioned Conan, as a slight digression off of the things I know we were going to talk about. There are a few things which are in development hell at the moment.
Conan will always be in development hell forever. But
I was wondering whether you could give us. There are a few things I'm aware of. Conan is one of them. Narnia is another. I think Redwall as well. There are some much loved characters, books, franchises, if you like, out there that the rights have been bought, but we've not seen anything. Do you know
traded
anything
hands
about...
a bunch of times? I have no new information on Conan. I know that for a while they were working on a show over at Amazon. This is years ago, and that got kind of stalled because they wanted to go with the Wheel of Time, which more power to them. They can make whatever shows they like. I don't know if a great Conan show or movie could be made right now. Like the John Milius film, if you released it today, would get some pushback. And it's one of my all-time favorite movies. And I love the Robert E. Howard source material. I think I've got, right here, Complete Chronicles of Conan right over my shoulder. I'm a big fan of like the Red Nail and those early classics that he wrote, but they're not to everybody's taste. And if you're going to invest an enormous amount of money, it's hard to keep the flavor and the sort and like kind of the approach pure and have it still be commercially viable. I would almost rather see them do like a really cool, bleak, evil animated series than try to do it live action. But I've also come to terms with the fact that Conan the Barbarian, the movie from 1982, it's one of a kind. It's probably the only great fantasy movie like it that we're ever going to get. And that makes it all the more special. And anytime I really want the Conan experience, I love like the John Buscema art from the 70s and that sort of thing. But in the end, it's those original Robert E. Howard stories that are so astonishingly good. If you're a fantasy or if you're a sword and sorcery fan, they're endlessly rewarding every time you revisit them.
Yeah, I agree completely. And for those who are unaware, I've got a second channel, actually, The Well Told Tale, where I do audio narrations of the best science fiction and fantasy stories ever, in my view. And I've obviously done a few Conan stories over there. So if you would like to...
What are your top 3 favorite Robert E. Howard Conan stories, do you think? Because you wrote them all kind of out of order, so you can dive in however you like. I
mean, Tower of the Elephant for me, it works... perfectly well. That was actually the first Conan story I read over there.
It's perfect. Yeah.
If you want a short story which just encapsulates who he is as a character, and it's just got everything you want from high fantasy. It's got magic, it's got fighting, it's got traps, it's got a bit of thinking, it's got a bit of a moral quandary, it's got everything you need, but it doesn't feel heavy. And it's
you're in and out like in 20 minutes. Yeah,
exactly. Robert E. Howard is the way that he wrote, and I agree with you completely. When I'm picking stories for reading, a lot of them I go, actually, no, I think I want to read that story. So you do have to pick them. But the way that his style was just so bombastic. The vocabulary usage is astonishing at times, and it was just so in your face, and you just have to just ride the wave with it. It's really good. But yeah, in terms of where it is, I think I'd agree. I think it's in development hell. I think it will be there for quite some time. I think Netflix have got the rights at the moment, but I've heard absolutely nothing about it for a while. Narnia, similarly, I think Netflix again have got the rights to Narnia. They have talked about building a Narnia universe, so TV shows, films as well, with implication means beyond the 7 stories, which are actually quite short stories. But I've not heard anything from that. So, I mean, I check every now and then, but I've not had anything. Redwall has been bought again. I think it's Netflix who've got that. They're buying quite a lot.
But with these old stories, I almost wish young filmmakers and TV writers would create new fictional settings and new worlds and new stories that are inspired by C.S. Lewis, Robert E. Howard, all the giants. But if we're always adapting this really old stuff, you constantly have people battling over whether or not they got it right, which is just exhausting over time. I'm ready for some new franchises. That's one of the things I like about Sapkowski is that it's all relatively new material. Or someone like Joe Abercrombie, like his 9 fantasy novels, I absolutely love and adore them. I feel like the world of fantasy always needs fresh blood injected into it. And so I'm not necessarily a huge fan of always looking to the giants of the past. I kind of want to see people in their 20s and 30s inventing entirely new fantasy settings with their own unique flavors. And I think that's what will keep the genre vibrant and exciting and alive and unpredictable.
Yeah, I agree. And this is, we're entering a world, I've said this is golden age, but the TV channels and the rights owners are still very risk averse. They're not wanting to put huge amounts of money into things they are not sure if they're going to work. So yes, they're going for established names, established franchises, and then when they get a hit, they're making more of the same thing, which is where we get Marvel taking over the universe, Star Wars expanding out into a million different things. We'll talk about those in just a moment as well. But this is what's happening with The Witcher. Andrew K, I saw in the chat you were giving Henry Cavill a little bit of love for his approach to all of it. I think, yeah, he's impressed a huge amount of people with his approach to Geralt, and actually trying to bring his love not just of the character in the show, but also the books into this. He's come out very well, I have to say.
He's easy to like. Yeah, he's a stud. And but also he's a stud with the heart and mind of a nerd, which is a rare combination. So yeah, it's a unique blend of character traits.
And he was on the Graham Norton show, chat show over here a few weeks ago, and randomly talked about his love of Warhammer, which is just what else do you do on primetime TV?
He posted that video making a PC, and the entire world like peed their pants. It's like he's just putting together a gaming computer, but you could just see he knows wherever he speaks. He's one of us when it comes to his passions.
Absolutely. Let's talk now about something. It's sort of new, but it is based on something from a while back. Westworld, season 4. We've had 3 seasons of this. They always take a little while between seasons of Westworld. They are filming it at the moment. We've not had many updates on that. But what are your expectations? I think it will happen this year. So if they're sort of most of the way through filming, I think we will see it this year.
What are your expectations? Lisa Joy and Jonathan Nolan say that they always had a 5-season arc planned from the word go from the beginning. I'm a Westworld fan. I liked this first season the most, but I watched every single episode. I did reviews of every single episode. I'm in. I'm invested. I like the setting. I like the characters. I like the way it has so many open doors to take it in different directions and bring in different types of fictional settings. Do I think every episode is where I would like it to be? No, but I'm pretty forgiving when it comes to it. I'm so in love with those characters at this point. I hope they will stick the landing with the final 2 seasons and really just give it like this feeling of this, like the giant sci-fi TV epic of our age. But if they don't stick the landing, then that's fine. We've still got The Expanse. I mean, The Expanse is wrapping up next week, but that's been an incredible 6-season run. And I think that's a strong contender for the best sci-fi of the last decade. But Westworld is definitely nipping at its heels. So I'll be rooting for it all the way.
Yeah, as far as The Expanse is concerned, I've had issues with this. This is all down to me, and I'm absolutely 100% convinced of this. I just cannot get into it. I've said this many times. Everyone I know who I respect, who likes the same things as me, tells me that it is fantastic. I've tried 3 times.
The first season's a mess. The first season's a mess, and until you get over the hump, you can't really like soak in that hot tub. I would just recommend read the first book. The first book is everything that they got wrong in the first season, they got right in the first book, where they tried bringing forward too many plot lines, too many characters, whereas the first book is from 2 people's points of view and very easy to follow. The first book is so much damn fun, and the 9th book just came out a few weeks ago, and it was glorious. So it's one of those things where it's finished, and unlike with George R. Martin, you can say, look, it's a 9-book series with a bunch of novellas that fill in the cracks. You can enjoy it all at once, and you know that they're gonna you're not gonna be left with a bittersweet feeling at the end. So I definitely recommend people at a minimum take a crack at the books, and if you love the books, definitely take a crack at the show.
I think that's probably the best way for me to go actually with this one, because I tried it. I tried the first episode and didn't really get on with it. And then somebody told me, oh, you have to get to episode 3 before you. And so I tried it again and got to episode 3 and again, didn't quite. And maybe this is what I need. I just need to go back to the books. That's generally how I work best. But let's talk about Westworld. So I'm with you. I thought season 1 of Westworld was as fine as TV drama can be, science fiction or anything. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was really well worked. Season 2, a little bit of a notch down, but I really enjoyed that again, probably more than most other people. Season 3, again, another notch down, which slightly disappointed me. The writing is still great. The acting is still fantastic. The music out of this world, brilliant. The ideas are fantastic. I love it. I will definitely watch it. But I think for me, they need to do something to kind of arrest the decline, and maybe
it needs a shot in the arm. Yeah,
maybe what this needs is what they've been sort of hinting at, which is the humans versus the robots massive battle out in the world. That might be where they're going. This kind of Terminator 2 kind of apocalyptic vision. That I think that would work really well. I don't know. I've literally got no information about what they're doing on this. They kept it quite tight, and I've not really sort of hunted for information on this. But it's definitely, I think, definitely going to be happening this year. My guess is probably the second half of the year, but who knows? We'll see. And most of the actors, almost all of the actors, I think, will be returning, even if the characters died, because Westworld, hey, nobody ever really dies in Westworld.
Absolutely.
you can carry on.
They can bring back Anthony Hopkins if they like. I mean, as long as he's still with us, why not?
Well, as I've said, is that if you have the option of bringing back Anthony Hopkins, why wouldn't you? But it's it must be an absolute dream just to be able to say, well, why don't we just have one of the greatest actors in the world just come for a little cameo, and no one will complain about it. Okay, so those are the things on my radar that I think on this channel we're going to be hugely focusing in on over the course of this next year. So if you're wanting sort of headlines of what I'll be covering, those are the things. But there are a few other things that I'm really quite interested in that I may also delve into as well. And I'd love your thoughts on a few of these things, because they're coming up. And you talk about sort of animes and things like that. This isn't an anime, but it is based on graphic novels that are generally considered to be
talking about these bad boys, the Sandman.
Sandman, yes.
Hell yeah, I love Sandman. Yeah,
they're generally for that, and I'm not really a graphic novel person myself, but they are fantastic. They're
really
absolutely
good,
wonderful, and everybody recognizes them as such. But This is now, it's been adapted. They are filming. I think they're still filming it. They have released a clip from what is basically the opening scene of the graphic novel, which basically has Charles Dance doing a satanic ritual. Which what more could you possibly want from life?
Sold.
And it looks great. But what are your clearly you've got it behind you. What's your hope? What do you expect?
I mean, I was late to the Sandman. I remember in the 90s when I was a giant comic book geek, but I was like I was a big two kind of guy at that point. And I remember people seeing like all these posters, and it was kind of marginally connected to DC, but it was more like a Vertigo title. And I was like, what is this Sandman nonsense? And then finally I bought the first trade paperback around like 2001 or 2. It's like, oh my God. It was just like a nuclear bomb going off in my brain. I just loved it so much. So I proceeded just to rip through them at record speed. I've reread them many times over. Neil Gaiman's just a master. And one of my great reading experiences of the last couple of years was when I finally read his Norse mythology book, which seems like, I don't know why I was so hesitant to read it, but once I did, it's one of those rare books where like it was attached to my body at all times until I was finished with it. Neil Gaiman's just fantastic. And so I'm rooting hard for this show to deliver. If it can capture even 10% of the majesty and the glory of that original comic, they will have a massive hit on their hands. It's just so special. There's no other story like it. So yeah, I'm Team Sandman all the way, and just I'm hoping it won't leave me brokenhearted. But his last show, was it The Good Omen? I thought that was pretty damn cool. Yeah. Is it Good Omens or Good Omen? Anyway,
Good Omens. Yeah, we'll talk about that in just one moment.
Yeah, but I enjoyed season 1. So Neil Gaiman, I think he's got a pretty good track record when it comes to TV.
He has, and I completely. He's one of my favorite writers. Full stop. So I'm definitely for this. It's also got Gwendolyn Christie in this as Lucifer, fantastically. Yeah. So it's got an amazing cast. It's looking fantastic. This is, of all the things out there that I know less about in terms of sort of development, this is right up there at the top of the list. I'm really excited about this. Well, I talked at the top of the show about the most anticipated IMDb, asking people what's the most anticipated shows. Sandman was I think it was like 3rd or 4th behind the big 2 things of House of the Dragon.
Were you a goth kid in the 90s and like kind of embracing the whole Sandman mystique? Because there were definitely kids who you like, that kid reads a lot of Sandman. Like you can just tell from the way they dressed and that sort of thing.
I mean, I wouldn't admit to being a goth kid, but I will say that I did have slightly more flowing locks back in the day. Let's
Beautiful.
put it that way. I thought of myself as Sauron-esque locks, but it probably didn't quite come out like more Brian May-esque. I think
it was also like one of those comics like The Preacher, where there are some people who don't read comics, but they love The Preacher. Same with the Sandman. There are a lot of people who don't read comics at all, but were religious about the Sandman. It's one of those rare kind of breakthrough comics that breaks out of the typical comic book consumer. And so, yeah, it's one of those standalone achievements that's up there with any other series by any. I mean, whether you want to talk Alan Moore or Grant Morrison or any of the people, the British Invasion, Warren Ellis, whomever, Neil Gaiman is right up there with all those giants.
Yes. So as I say, I'm not really a kind of a graphic novel expert geek, but this is one that is absolutely it's a work of art, I would say. And you were talking about actually just a very quick reflective rambling. You're saying pics or it's not true. Referring to my hair, I suspect.
Oh, gotcha. I used to have long hair too before it all fell out in fistfuls.
I will go with the it's not true then. No pics existed. This was before the invention of the camera. But we were talking about Neil Gaiman, and you mentioned Good Omens, and I said I wanted to talk about that. Good Omens. I'll give a little bit of background to this because this was something which surprised me when they announced season 2. I think it surprised a lot of people. Good Omens is a fantastic book. It was co-written by Neil Gaiman and the late great Terry Pratchett, and it is uproariously funny as well as being an excellent story in and of itself. They made it into the TV show, which was I think it was a couple of years ago, maybe even 3 years ago now.
And I enjoyed it.
David Tennant, Michael Sheen. Really, the connection between those two guys is they've got real chemistry going on there. Fantastic show. Really loved it. And I think everyone else thought that's it. It's a one-off. They're not going to do anything else. And then they announced season 2, and it's like, well, hang on a moment. this isn't how does this work? There was only one book. They didn't do another. Terry Pratchett is now dead. What's going on? And then Neil Gaiman clarified the situation. And it's a fantastic. I think I tweeted it out at the time. I'd suggest going hunting for it, but I've no idea when it was, a long time ago. But he did this blog post where he basically said, so this is the situation, is that he and Terry Pratchett, back in their younger days, they were at a con somewhere when they promoting Good Omens, I think, back at the time. Neither of them were quite as famous or as rich as they are now, so they were sharing a hotel room. And the Terry Pratchett was not really a nightlife kind of guy. He did the day at the con and then went home and went to bed. Neil Gaiman, a lot more of the sort of the after dark kind of guy. Neil Gaiman arrived back at this hotel room late at night, still buzzing from whatever party he'd been at. Terry Pratchett has got jet lag and hasn't been able to sleep. And so they start talking, and they mapped out, apparently, what the sequel would be to Good Omens. And they wrote it down, and it's there, and they never did. But at that point, however, both of their careers just exploded, and they never had time to come back and write this. And Neil Gaiman has now said, you know what? I know that he was good friends with Terry Pratchett through his life, and I know that he would be very happy for this to be developed. We always wanted to develop it. So that is what we're going to see. We're going to see the unwritten novel that Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman never quite got around to doing, which is a fantastic little story. And so I'm really loving this, because I do not know, and you say it's quite rare these days, I do not know anything about this. I don't know where they were going to go with it. I don't know the storyline. I mean, I can kind of guess a bit because I know the original, but I don't know at all. But you enjoyed the first one. Have you any expectations for this?
I mean, until you brought it up, it wasn't on my radar at all. But there's no denying the charisma of those two leads. And I'll never forget watching an interview with Gaiman prior to the first season when he was trying to sell the show. He got a lot of kind of confused questions about the tone. And he said, look, when it's funny, it's going to be funny. And when it's sad, it's going to be sad. And when it's scary, it's going to be scary. But it's like the tone is not going to be locked in place. I was like, thank you, Neil Gaiman. You're actually like a real storyteller. There's so many people who think that, oh, like an epic show can only be epic and always has to be kind of like locked in that gear. And it's like stories are stories, and they can explore every style, every emotion. And I feel like whatever Neil Gaiman is attached to, he will make sure at least the writing is covered. Obviously, a lot of ingredients go into a show that are beyond his control, from the look of the show to the casting. He's only one man. You can only do but so much. But I think at this point, he's got so many legions of fans. People will not want to alienate him. So I hope he will exercise a degree of creative control. And as long as he's more or less in the driver's seat, I've got full confidence it'll be well worth checking out.
And he is. He's the showrunner for this. This is his baby. So the things like Sandman, he's definitely involved. He's there as an executive producer. He's had a lot of input into it, but he's not the showrunner on this one. He is. It's his baby. He's written it. He's in charge of it. And there's a third not Terry Pratchett. There's a third Neil Gaiman show. Actually, I don't think they've started filming it, so I don't think this is for 2022. And Nancy Boys, which is a story I love. It's one of my favorite of his novels, which is out there. And they're going to be filming, I think they're filming it after they've done Good Omens 2. So as I say, probably we can expect that next year rather than this. But that's something else just to keep on your radar.
Beautiful.
Okay, let's talk about let's talk about Star Wars, because there are a few things out there. I know you're a Star Wars fan. I love Star Wars myself as well. I don't cover it on the channel, but there have been quite a few really good quality Star Wars things coming out recently, particularly The Mandalorian. We are going to have, I think, Mandalorian season 3 coming out soon. Boba Fett just launched I don't know, last
Yes.
week or
Episode
something
2
like that.
was yesterday. Yeah.
And we've also got a third show that I'm quite invested in, which is the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. That's Ewan McGregor's around for that one.
And the
What's your take?
Ahsoka show is coming as well. So, yeah.
Exactly. Tell us about. Take your pick of any or all of them. What can we look forward to in all of this?
Well, it seems like there are going to be a handful of shows that are more or less interconnected in terms of their continuity, and those are going to be the shows where you have people like Robert Rodriguez and Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, as well as like some directors like Bryce Dallas Howard, who are kind of fleshing out their corner of the Star Wars universe. And then there are going to be some shows and movies that take place outside of that. I'm very excited about this little corner that they're carving out for themselves, and I'm enjoying Book of Boba Fett. I like Mandalorian a little bit more, but I'm watching all of it, and I will be watching Ahsoka, and I'll totally be watching Obi-Wan more out of, I wouldn't say morbid curiosity, but like, like let's just say I was not fond of Hayden Christensen back when those movies launched. I was 23 when Phantom Menace came out, and so like throughout my 20s, I basically spent that entire decade just cursing the name of Star Wars. But I'm curious to see what Hayden Christensen can do as Anakin after all these years. And I adore Ewan McGregor. I've been watching him since I saw Shallow Grave in London, the Danny Boyle film, when it first came out back in 1995. I've been a Ewan McGregor fan for a quarter century at this point. So 100% sign me up for Obi-Wan. And we'll with so many Star Wars shows being made, it's kind of like the fantasy thing. One or two of them are destined to be good. They won't all be good, but one or two of them will break through and give us something special.
Yeah, I mean, of those ones there, the Mandalorian I've really enjoyed, and what I found was that it recaptured the feel for me of the original Star Wars in terms of we're just going to tell a good story, and we've got a fantastic universe, we've got fantastic characters, and we're not going to try and build in any great anything to it, any great moral message, any great meta narrative or critique of the world. This is just a fun story, and that really worked for me. And I think as a spin-off, I've not watched Boba Fett yet. I might wait for it all to be downloaded, and then I'll just binge the lot of it. I was really looking forward to that. Just simply the whatever it was, 20-second, 30-second, just little promo thing they did of him walking into
one
Boba Fett's
tidbit
palace.
That might accelerate when you watch it. Robert Rodriguez, who's a director I admire, directed 3 of the episodes of Book of Boba Fett, one of which was the first. If you've liked Robert Rodriguez's movies in the past, Sin City or Desperado or El Mariachi or Alita Battle Angel, I encourage all of Robert Rodriguez's fans to take a crack at Book of Boba Fett, because he's what kind of not in charge, but once again, he's directing 3 of the 7 episodes. It's kind of his baby in a lot of ways.
Excellent. And just because I spotted it, Sarah Awesome Sauce, thank you so much for the super chat saying hi to Robert and Dan, and also hello James, I share your enthusiasm for Obi-Wan's show. I've been on the hook for that one since they started teasing it years ago. What an exciting year. Yeah, I think I'm with you, James, also Sarah. I'm looking forward to Obi-Wan. I am a bit concerned like you. It's unfair on him as an actor, I suspect, Hayden Christensen, but I would love to see what he can do. A lot of actors, when coming back to a role that was theirs many years later, actually bring something new to it.
Let's just hope they don't bring back Jake Lloyd.
Well, I was thinking Cobra Kai. It's a completely different world, but
I love Cobra Kai.
I'm
a massive Cobra Kai fanatic. So
yeah, they brought the characters back, and they've made them slightly more nuanced. It's still not high art. It's just generally entertaining stuff. But they've created characters that are slightly more nuanced than the originals, at least. But yeah, so Obi-Wan, interesting. Tell us a little bit about Ahsoka as well. That's the last one on the sort of Star Wars.
I first discovered her late because when the Clone Wars cartoon, I remember seeing like the first few episodes as a feature in the theater. Kind of left Clone Wars alone for years. And then for the final season, I think it was the last 4 episodes were basically the Ahsoka show. And I was just floored by the animation, her arc, her character. It was just so damn exciting and so much fun. It's like, God damn, like, why have I not been watching this show all along? And then I really enjoyed what Rosario Dawson did with her brief appearance in season 2 of The Mandalorian. So she's a cool actress, and I think the character's got enormous potential. But for people who want to do the deep dive but have yet to do so, those last 4 episodes of the Clone Wars on the Disney Plus app will completely floor you. Whatever generation of Star Wars fan you consider yourself to be, it kind of cuts through all that and just delivers this really fun, exciting experience. So yeah, if they are able to recapture that magic, hell yeah, it'll be a fantastic show. And once again, I think Dave Filoni really gets that character, and we'll see what they do.
Excellent. Well, I'm really looking forward to it. Clone Wars is an anime, I suppose. It's went on for several seasons. It's
I think
something
7 seasons total, I believe.
Something like that. Yeah, it's something I've been very over the course of several. I do this every now and then. Over the course of several years, I've been working my way through it, just dipping in when I feel like watching an episode or two. And I'm about 5 seasons in, and it does get better with every season. It's one of those the rare delight. First of all, I tuned in thinking, this will just be a little bit of something mindless, maybe a cartoon for the kids was what I thought it was, but it does build up to a lot more than that. Let's talk about 2 things. First of all, something dear to my own heart, which I will happily talk about for just a minute or two, and then secondly, something that I think you may well know a little bit more than I do. So Doctor Who I will talk about first, because we're having no new season of Doctor Who this year. We've got 2. We've had one. There was a New Year special, and then there are 2 other specials booked in. But the reason I'm raising it now is because this is going to be a big shift in Doctor Who. We're going to have a regeneration to start with. Jodie Whittaker's come to the end of her time. She will be regenerating at the end of the second of those 2 specials. So towards the end of the year. They have not yet picked the new Doctor, but they have picked the new showrunner, who is Russell T Davies, who is the guy who was there for the reboot to start with. So he is clearly
the original, like early 2000s reboot when they first brought it back. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So when you have like the first few seasons, like the David Tennant era, and also Christopher Eccleston with his fantastic first season, he was the guy in charge of it then. And this is very clearly, I think, from the BBC, have seen ratings have been slowly dropping down over time, and they know that this is a well-loved franchise, and I think they want to give it a kick up the backside, and they probably will be expanding out beyond. This is what Russell T Davies has said, beyond just the main show, having a few spin-offs and things like that as well. So there's not much in terms of content for Doctor Who happening this year, but this is going to be quite a big year in terms of where we go with this. So expect announcements about who the new Doctor is, what we might see in the future. They might go anywhere with this. So that's my thing on Doctor Who. One thing that I know less about, but I'm hoping you know a bit more about, Raised by Wolves. Now, this is something
I saw first season. Yeah, so yeah, I'm up to speed.
Excellent, because I missed this. People who I respect recommended it, and I just never got round to watching it. And then
Ridley Scott, baby,
came along.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
I love Ridley Scott, so and everything about it did appeal. But could you give us like a 30-second pitch? What is it? What's to like, and why should we be thinking about?
Remember earlier when I was talking about how fantasy needs new franchises and new stories to kind of give it a shot in the arm? Same holds true, obviously, for science fiction. And what I loved about Raised by Wolves, it was a brand new fictional setting, not based on any previously existing IP. And you have Ridley Scott and his son as 2 of the main directors on it. And I just kind of surrendered over to it. It's such an unusual vibe. And it's got such a dynamic cast. And it's unlike any science fiction show I've ever seen before. And it's almost like a strange, like Adam and Eve scenario where it says a lot about the show that to pitch the loose premise is difficult because it's hard. You can't just like kind of make like the 25 words or less pitch on what it's quote unquote about. But if you like disturbing, dark science fiction that will be upsetting at times, but at the same time, very incredibly stimulating to the imagination, I strongly recommend season 1, and I will be there on day 1 for season 2. I guess one of my biggest frustrations as a fan of fantasy, sci-fi, horror, superheroes, etc., it's just the risk-averse mentality of so many studios. And it was just a relief to see Ridley Scott showing that he's still got some gas left in the tank and can still deliver a brand new sci-fi experience that doesn't have the word alien in the title. So, and also the season 1 ended on such a bizarre cliffhanger. I have no idea where they're going with season 2, but very high expectations.
Good. So would you recommend that I watch season 1 and then go straight on into season 2? Is it worth investing my time?
The first 2 episodes, I believe, are directed by Ridley, and they look and feel like a world-class science fiction film. And if you don't respond to those first 2 episodes, it's probably not the show for you. But I have a feeling that first episode will just knock you flat.
I shall make sure that I prioritize it then. Just to remind people, if you're coming into this, that I am taking the questions, all of the super chats, as well as the questions from my patrons. We'll do them after we've just worked through this list of the TV shows for next year. So do not worry. I am going to be picking up all of them as well, and we'll try and pick up as much as we can in the chat. Incidentally, if you would rather watch this on Twitch, I am simulcasting my word for the year. This is over on Twitch as well. So I'm not sort of interacting with the chat over there, and I don't think that I have many people over there watching me. But if you would find it easier, then please do go over there as well. And actually, while I'm on my announcements, patrons, thank you. I say this every time. I mean this every time. Your support is what helps me dedicate the time that I do to doing what I do. Thank you so much. I genuinely cannot do it without you. So thank you, and I hope you all had a fantastic break. But let's go to another couple of things. I want to get on to questions, but the Critical Role TV show is coming out, which is called The Legend of Vox Machina. Now, I don't know how up to speed
I think it's Vox Machina, but I might be wrong.
Vox Machina. Okay, excellent. I've not heard it said at all. But for those who are not up to speed at all, this was it was a YouTube sensation, really. The Critical Role is people playing Dungeons and Dragons, but doing it in a really engaging, amusing way. You can hunt them down on the internet there, and it's really good. And particularly over lockdowns and with COVID, then people really engage with that, and that has now been turned into a TV show. I know no more than that. That is something I'm definitely going to try out. Do you know more about this than I do, though?
You're talking to somebody who's been playing Dungeons and Dragons off and on since about 1984. So D&D is not only something that I've got experience with, I'm actually still currently playing. This past year, I ran a 5th edition campaign for a couple of my friends online. We had a blast. And this year, I'm running a 1st edition campaign, but I whipped out this book. I ran Tales from the Yawning Portal last year, which is a collection of 7 modules, many of which are kind of updates to classic modules. So I am totally invested in the tabletop RPG world. With Critical Role, the bits that I've watched are the episodes involving Joe Manganiello, who's probably the most famous celebrity D&D gamer in the world, in spite of being like a giant hulking superhuman male who's been in all these great movies. He's also a giant dork who read Dragonlance back in the 80s. And I loved all the bits where he basically stole the hand of Vecna and caused this viral sensation by betraying his party, by hacking up the hand of Vecna and putting on his character, yada, yada, yada. My problem, well, I wouldn't say my problem. The only reason I don't watch Critical Role more often is that I'd just rather would be playing. I can either play the game for 3 hours, or I can watch other people play it. And it's like watching somebody play a video game. I want to hold the controller. I want to be in the driver's seat. And I'm a forever DM. I've been a dungeon master since like 1988. So I'm just used to running my own games, and my style and my flavor is like every DM's specific. And so I'd much rather, if I'm going to immerse myself for hours in D&D, I'd rather just play the game for a few hours. And so, yeah, I was actually getting one of my players prepared for my new campaign right before hopping on this live stream with you. But if people just want to get a taste for D&D, where the roles are played by world-class voice actors, definitely take a crack at it. Just know that is one style of D&D, but there's a lot of different styles. There's many styles to play in D&D as there are authors in the fantasy genre. So,
wow, that's an excellent little summary there. I'm delighted to know you're a D&D fan. I've played some of the Tales from the Yawning Portal myself, I have to say.
Nice, yeah. You can see my 1st edition books right here, back behind you. Yeah.
This is astonishing. But so this is, as I understand it, in terms of the TV show, it's going to be, I think, February the 4th or something like that. So it's in about a month's time. This is coming out. It's going to be on Amazon, and they are using, I think, the original voice actors, and it's going to be again sort of an anime style. So I think it's certainly something to keep an eye out for. I haven't got a view yet on how good it's going to be, but certainly it comes with a good pedigree.
What do you think of the Matt Mercer effect? Because I've seen this where a lot of people who are new to the game love Critical Role, and they get irate when they join a game and it's not in the style of Critical Role, where it's like, no, you're doing it wrong. Like, they expect the fellow players to be as good at acting as the performers in Critical Role, but most people who play D&D are just gamers, and they aren't world-class, voice actors. And so it is funny how Critical Role's almost set up unrealistic expectations to newcomers who are kind of almost confused that not everybody out there has the same production value to their campaigns as Matt Mercer.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I think it will attract people into it regardless. And I think that if we get a new generation of people who can create their own fantasy, which is basically what playing Dungeons and Dragons role-playing games is about, is creating your own fantasy world and creating the stories within that, then I love it. I think it's a wonderful thing. So yes, I'd much rather they have the best of the best doing this as the showcase than something else, and maybe that leaves a few people disappointed that the people they're playing with aren't great voice actors. But I think I can live. I can just live with that one. But there's a sort of a tenuous link across here to the next thing I want to talk about, which is Stranger Things through D&D. Now, Stranger Things is something I've enjoyed. I've not sat down and watched it beginning to end, but I feel I've watched a lot of my friends have watched it, and I've sort of like seen random episodes here and there, so I feel like I know it. We're now up to, I think, season 4.
Yeah,
is it?
4 is on its way. Yeah.
And again, this is going to be on Netflix. Are you a Stranger Things fan? Is there anything you can?
I'm up to speed.
What to expect?
I would say season 1 was my favorite. And then kind of like what you were describing with Westworld, how it's been a downward slide or diminishing returns. And the cast is so big now, I think it's almost kind of become unwieldy. But I'm hoping because they've taken a couple of years off, they'll have recharged their batteries. It's obviously going to be a very new approach. You're talking about the late 80s versus the early 80s. At times, I guess I have a cautionary note to offer about overindulging in nostalgia. I lived through the 80s. I was born in 76. I'm as nostalgic for the 80s as anyone else. But I do think sometimes the nostalgia almost becomes militarized or weaponized to the point where it kind of can choke out any other new forms of stories kind of coming into the equation. And so I hope that they will be inspired by the movies and the music and the games of the 80s and make the show feel more groundbreaking and original, as opposed to constantly just wallowing in doing fake lightsaber battles or playing songs from the Never-Ending Story and that sort of thing. So they were losing me by the end of the 3rd season, but it's obviously one of the most popular shows that Netflix ever made. So what do I know? If I was working on it, I'd probably run it into the ground and turn it into a flop. So
yeah, I mean, I think it's got a limited shelf life because it's based around the children, and obviously the children are all getting older. So I think I've read that they're going to do 5 seasons and out. So I think that's what the plan is. I get what you're saying there. I think that out of all the TV shows I've seen over the last few years, this is probably the one that glories in pop references the most, to the extent that you're always looking for what are they going to be referencing next, which is fun in and of itself, but as long as they don't rely on it too much. But this is the kind of the new stories that we've been talking about. This is the kind of thing that we do want to be seeing and encouraging. So I'm very happy that it's out there. I will definitely watch, I'm sure, some of it. Even if I'm not going to binge my way all through it, it's as you say, it's a massive hit. So there are definitely a lot of people out there who do like it. Let's talk, actually, just entirely left field. I know I said I was going to do super chats and things at the end, but just because it's here, Dean Brown, first of all, Mara Lee, thank you so much for the super sticker just one moment ago. But Dean Brown saying, to take a slight left field turn, are you guys fans of The Last of Us? And are you looking forward to the HBO adaptation? That and House of the Dragon are my most anticipated this year. Great chat so far. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. So for those who don't know, The Last of Us is incredibly successful game franchise. Two games. And it's got I'm not as big a gamer as some people, but what I just from what I've seen, I've watched a couple of YouTube playthroughs on YouTube. Actually, the quality of the graphics and the acting is really up there. It's very high.
They played
it's almost cinematic. Exactly. Yeah. So it's really very good. And this is very much a story driven thing. It's a kind of a post-apocalyptic kind of thing, and it's got a couple of actors in it who we know. Having said that, I've entirely forgotten their names, but the Bella Ramsey, who was in Game of Thrones, she was the little bear. I've entirely. I'm losing track now. Why don't you take over from me, James? While I try and pick up again, and I forget the name of the lead actor in The Mandalorian as well. You know who these people are. Tell us a bit about it.
I wish I could claim to be an expert on Last of Us, but I've always been an Xbox guy, and that's a PlayStation exclusive. So I've watched the trailers and the playthroughs from a distance. I'm always a little cautious about adaptations of video games because people who are fans of gaming franchises want to play the game. Like the Assassin's Creed movie was an abomination, but first and foremost, even if it had been a better movie, I probably still would have been frustrated because I'd rather just be playing one of the Assassin's Creed games. It's a really tricky. I'm trying to think of there. You can probably count on one hand how many great film and TV adaptations there are of games, and I would include Castlevania is one of the better examples of a classic gaming franchise that's been made new and relevant again in the context of anime. So if I was going to do the deep dive on Last of Us, I would just buy a PlayStation 4 and play the first game, because my understanding is that it's one of the best games of the last decade, like without question. But sadly, I've never done the deep dive. But I am an avid gamer. I'm looking forward to Elden Ring, which comes out in February. It's from all the people who make all the Dark Souls games. Those are my 3 favorite games of the last 10 years. So Elden Ring is basically an open world Dark Souls. So I will drop off the face of the earth probably for a month when that game comes out. You will not hear from me because I would just be wallowing in my own filth, unable to tear myself away from that gaming experience.
Well, the Elden Ring obviously is also one of the things George R. R. Martin has been occupying his time with when not writing the things that we want him to be writing. That is not a gripe whatsoever. He is
guilty as charged,
owner of his own time, and he can do whatever he wants with it. But that's just to let you know of his involvement in that. People in the chat are obviously screaming at me, Pedro Pascal, and wondering whether I need a cup of tea or something. I'm doing well. Thank you for just a little bit of a brain freeze. But I think the short answer is I'm not a huge fan of this, but I from what I've seen, it looks like it's going to be excellent. So it's something that I'm definitely keeping an eye out for. Let's have a look, though. I know something else you cover on your channel that I don't really cover over here. The more sort of the super worlds. What is there coming out that? Well, first of all, I'll give you my pitch of where I'm going, because I do love these kinds of things. I watch pretty much all of the movies and the TV shows when they come out. What I've loved with Marvel in the sort of the latest iteration of what they've been producing is that they've started doing things slightly differently. Things like WandaVision took things at a slightly different angle. I thought Loki was great as well. What have we got coming up? Are they going out on a limb with things, or are we just going to get more just the same blockbuster superheroes stories?
I think everybody who's a diehard Marvel fan is going to have a different idea of what going out on a limb means. Like for a lot of people, Eternals was the movie that went out on a limb, but it had a mixed reaction. I went into it after reading all the reviews expecting like a giant disaster, but I actually was happily surprised. I really enjoyed some elements of Eternals. Marvel isn't though necessarily known for being at the bleeding edge of risk taking, but the one exception might be Taika Waititi's Thor: Love and Thunder. I thought he absolutely hit the home run of all home runs with Thor Ragnarok. I saw that movie many times in the theater. I saw it many times at home. Taika Waititi's a world-class filmmaker. He's made many brilliant movies over the years. In terms of just wild, uncontainable creativity, he's one of those visionary directors. So I would put my faith in Love and Thunder as a movie that might take more creative risks than your typical Marvel project.
Okay. Well, I think that's something to look forward to. The other thing that's on my radar over on DC is there's a new Batman, obviously, Robert Pattinson. And that
and
is...
the latest trailer was incredible.
Excellent. I don't know if I've seen that yet. I'm not there yet, but I do wonder whether at some point soon I'm going to get Batman fatigue, because there have been a lot of Batmans in my lifetime. How is this going to be different, or are we just going to get the same sort of backstory and sort of slightly tortured Dark Knight that we've had a few iterations of recently?
Well, I think we're going to get our best Catwoman since Michelle Pfeiffer in the early 90s. Zoe Kravitz, by the way. Yeah. Zoe Kravitz looks like she is completely embodied the role, and you can tell the sexual attraction between Robert Pattinson and Zoe is intense. I know they were carrying on a pretty, lurid affair during the making of the film, and apparently got caught making out on the Batmobile. And I feel like what I'm looking forward to is that sexual tension, because a lot of superhero movies can be pretty chaste and pretty, like they pretend like, human reproduction is not even a thing. And so I'm looking forward to a sexier Batman movie. And I also like how it seems to be leaning all in on the detective aspects that so often get ignored. While I enjoy pretty much every iteration of Batman in history, I grew up reading the comics where he oftentimes would just like spend the whole issue of a comic just solving a mystery with like a pad and pencil, like Sherlock Holmes. It looks as if they're going to go all in on that aspect with his matching of or dueling of wits with the Riddler. So yeah, Matt Reeves, I think this is the movie he's been building to his entire career. I think his movies keep getting better. He keeps getting more impressive. And I think his whole career has been like rushing headlong toward this film. So yeah, the latest trailer really caught my attention.
Okay, good. Well, I'll definitely be watching it. And it's Batman is one of my favorite DC characters, I have to say. And they obviously use him a lot as sort of the lead, sort of in the same way that Marvel used Iron Man. This is their main go-to guy. What else? Actually, I just got distracted. I should probably just say in the chat, Banana Facts with Banana Dave. Thank you very much for your comment saying, did you know that bananas float in water? I did not know that. Good banana fact.
Wow, I didn't know that either. So.
I do. So
I came here expecting to learn about lore and legends, but I've learned,
Well, Banana Dave added on soda, apples, and watermelons. So you've learned something today. What else is there out there? We've talked our way through quite a lot of different things which are happening. As I say, there's a lot going on. It's almost every week there's going to be something big and new and hopefully exciting launching. What else is there? I know that when we were sort of messaging beforehand, you came out with a list of a lot of things you were looking forward to. Of the things we haven't covered, what else is there that you think?
Well, for people who have a sentimental weakness for Vikings, we have two big projects. We have Vikings Valhalla on February 25th, which takes place 100 years after the previous Vikings show. And then we also have a movie called The Northman on April 22nd, which is from director, I think his name's Robert Eggers. He did The Lighthouse and he did The Witch. Really talented young director. I've got very high hopes for both of those. I love me a good Viking story. I watch like The Last Kingdom, anything and everything with Vikings, sign me up. So either The Northman or Vikings Valhalla, I'm hoping that one or two, or perhaps both, will just be absolute home run entertainment.
Excellent. The other thing I wanted to pick up on, Mara Lee over on Patreon, I know that you were asking about this as well, so I'll pick this up here as well. His Dark Materials Season 3. I have loved, I love the books, but I also loved the first two seasons they've done. It's a trilogy of books, and they've kept season 1 was book 1, and so this is very clearly going to be book 3. So far it's looked amazing. If you've not engaged with the TV show so far, but you saw the movie from a while ago, this is, in my view, much better, much closer to the original books. It feels a lot darker, but also quite raw. The actors are fantastic. They've got some particular Ruth Wilson. I'm a huge fan of Ruth Wilson, who does an amazing Mrs. Coulter. So that will come out. They have finished filming it. So it's obviously got to go into post-production. I think I heard second half of the year, but that's definitely going to be happening. It's a lot. I don't know. I'll find it in a moment, James, but I don't know whether you're a fan of the books, but the third book is bigger in scale by quite a long way.
I've only read the first novel, so yeah, I can't speak to the third novel, unfortunately.
Well, the third one just gets huge in terms of the scope of what they're trying to do. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how they adapt it, because the first one is very kind of just about the world going around in boats and running around London or Oxford or whatever. But by the time you get to 3, then we've got different planets and realities and types of existence. It's a lot bigger and a lot more philosophical as well, which I'm very much looking forward to. Have you seen did you see the show?
I only saw the first 2 or 3 episodes, and I can't even remember why I fell off, but I fell off at a certain point, even though I think I've posted even like a rave review for the season 1 premiere. I have no idea why I stopped following it, but I would say I really enjoyed the first novel, but it didn't like put its hooks into the side of my head the way some fantasy and science fiction books do. And so perhaps that's why I didn't necessarily surrender over to it to the same degree, but I probably also just need to finish the season 1 and see what it's all about.
Yeah, well, I would highly recommend it. It's over in my country. It's on the BBC. I think it's on HBO.
HBO in America.
If you're in America, so it's it's a sort of a joint production, and which seems to be the way that a lot of these things are starting.
Yeah,
to
like
go
Gangs
well.
of London. First, y'all got it on Sky, and then we got it on, I think, on AMC here in America. But we always have like this unfortunate lag time. I'm like, let us all enjoy it at the same time, so we can all talk about it.
Well, yes, I mean, as I say, the times things drop at now is always confuses me. Is when I'm used to the good old fashioned when Game of Thrones came out, it was always at 9 p.m. Eastern time, which for me is 2 a.m. in the morning, and that was like I could just manage to get my head around: am I really going to stay up, or do I wake up early? What's going on there? But now it's like, well, when does Amazon drop things? When does Netflix? And they all seem to be different. Very confusing.
You got to look up GMT.
Exactly. Okay, so that's the list of things that we were going to go through. But now, what I'd love to do is just to pick up on some questions in the chat. So do keep on dropping some things there. I've been trying to copy across the things as they happened. Moderators, if I miss anything, then please do shout. But let's just quickly go. Mara Lee, thank you very much. Before we went on air, actually, saying looking forward to the fabulous shows that will be airing on TV this year, including House of the Dragon and Lord of the Rings, just to show love and appreciation for the fabulous content and stories. Well, thank you very much. And then also you wished me, James, and all in the chat a very happy and safe new year. Hugs to the mods and Dan. Lyle Hammock saying, hello, Robert. Hope you had an amazing New Year's. Thank you very much. No question today, just to thank you for all you do. Can't wait for the genre TV coming next. And then you followed up with a question. Excellent, Lyle. Thank you very much. What do you think is the biggest hurdle to adapting Lord of the Rings and House of the Dragon? For me, it's the fact that they're using history, not already made story, with dialogue and character development. Yeah, I think this is good. It's interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one as well, James. I think that there's the first part of this is going to, well, I'll just pick on House of the Dragon to start with, and we'll come on to Lord of the Rings in a moment, because I think we talked a bit about the issue there, is that this is completely new, and obviously they've got the masters sort of lack of the dialogue from Tolkien. But with House of the Dragon, one thing I would say is they've got, with Fire and Blood, George R.R. Martin deliberately wrote it as what we might today call a biased account. This is not supposed to be objective history. This is a maester writing a history of what was going on, and he talks about his sources. And so he's got like, and Septon Eustace said this, and Mushroom reported that, and then we're sometimes left a bit uncertain about what the actual truth is of something. Did this sordid thing actually happen as Mushroom suggested, or was it actually a really boring chat in a room as Septon Eustace suggested? That kind of thing. Some of that they can work their way around by just sort of like panning the camera away and allowing us and as viewers to kind of make our own minds up. But some of it they may wish to take a particular angle, and that's the point at which they are then, because of the way that the TV show almost certainly will be presented as an objective account of what was happening, they're then going beyond the source material in a slightly different way to usual. But James, what's your take? What do you think the biggest challenges are? I know, as you say, you've read Fire and Blood. What do you think are the big challenges?
It's just the format change. You're going from breadth to depth, and obviously, it's hard to do a show that reflects the style of a historical tome like Fire and Ice. And they're having to invent a lot of new material, and the devil will always be in the details. And you live, breathe, and die on the quality of your writing staff. And also, right, these days, there's so many shows and so many movies in production. There are only so many genius level writers to go around. And it's like, how many genius level screenwriters do they have on the show? Because they're going to need them, because people's expectations, even if the Game of Thrones brand got a dent back in the final season, it's still one of the most beloved and just popular brands in the world. I mean, I think it was the most pirated show ever when it was running. So people's expectations are going to be through the stratosphere. So it can be a victim of its own success. It is both a blessing and a curse to have greatness behind you. And it's probably going to be one of the most hotly debated and quickly dissected first episodes of TV of the modern age. So heaven help them, because people are going to come with their knives out. But obviously, fingers crossed, I'm hoping for the awe-inspiring deep dive into Targaryen history that we all are hoping for.
Exactly. And I think that does bring another challenge with it, which is whereas Game of Thrones had just a couple of Targaryens really for us to be thinking about, most of this is about Targaryens. They're all over the place, and they've all got the dragons, and they all have very similar sounding names, and they all have a vaguely similar look as well with the hair. So that will be an issue for them. Anyone who's read Fire and Blood and who claims that they did not get confused at some point between which Viserys or Rhaenyra or Rhaenys or whatever, then they're lying to you. Even people who are deep in the detail have to stop every now and then and just have a think, okay, so what relation are you to that other person? Because I know you married your uncle, and then
the inbreeding makes it complicated.
So they have to be able to present this in as straightforward a way as they possibly can, particularly given the fact that a lot of the politics and the build up to the Dance of the Dragon is dependent on actually a relatively detailed understanding.
How do you think people are going to respond? There's like central characters who like go into battle flying beside their sisters who are also their wives and that sort of thing. I mean, that's a pretty heady brew.
It is, yeah, very, very much so. I mean, as I say, now I'm not going to even go in there, but when there's a couple of characters that you just go with when you list down all the different types of relationship they are to each other, their husband and wife, their uncle and niece, they were daughter-in-law and father, and he's just like, you go, actually this is really quite complicated trying to explain it. So I think for me that will be one of the big problems we've got coming up. Sasuke, thank you so much, saying, hey, excited to super chat for once. Do you ever watch any sillier fantasy stuff, as in my fave show What We Do in the Shadows, season 4 coming this year? Well, let me just say, What We Do in the Shadows, I love it. It's it's really, really good. If you've never watched it, hunt it down. It is silly, but it's good silly, and it's very, very, very funny. It's one of my favorite shows at the moment. In fact, I'm a bit annoyed with myself for not remembering to have that on my list of things to look forward to this year. So we've had 3 seasons, and the quality has stayed very high all the way through. Are you a fan at all, James?
Love the movie. I think I even saw it twice, and I backed the Kickstarter campaign when they distributed the film, and that also involved Taika Waititi. I have no idea why. I have no excuse. I haven't watched the show, even though I thought the first film was absolutely hysterical. So I will add that to my to-do list.
Definitely do. As I say, it is very silly, and it's just like, and the premise is not, there's nothing huge about it. it's some vampires living in modern day New York, and that's it. But
I'm a New Yorker, so once again, no excuses.
Yeah. Exactly. So this is just small but great. So yes, I would highly recommend that people go and check that one out. Sasuke saying, I love it, and not just because Nandor rhymes with Sandor. Well, there are many reasons to love it. Matt Berry's performance also is excellent in it, I have to say. Let's go to a question from Cloaked One. Hi there, Cloaked One. Happy New Year to you. Saying, first off, Happy New Year. Secondly, thank you for your wonderful Witcher content over the Christmas and New Year break. Haven't read the books for a while, so the refresher has been good. No question there, but yeah, absolutely. I would very much recommend reading the books. When James was talking earlier about them being smaller and more digestible, if you've never read them, then first of all, the books of short stories, wonderfully accessible, fantastic reads. I highly recommend it. But the books themselves, just by context, at the moment, a lot of these kind of books I listen to off Audible. Not being sponsored for saying that, I just do. And when you go to stuff like the Song of Ice and Fire ones, they're often like 30, 40, 50 hours for a book. The Witcher ones are about 12 hours, I think, and it's just like it just feels like a whole lot less of a slog. Incidentally, again, not being sponsored for this one, but I did find my best bargain so far on Audible, if you are an Audible person like me, the entire Sherlock Holmes, read by Stephen Fry, over 70 hours for just £1. Check it out. Over 70 hours, all of Sherlock Holmes, and with a fantastic reader as well. So do go and check that one out. Stephanie, no name. Do you think George R.R. Martin's Thursday posts are a countdown? Oh, this is a fantastic question. This is for those who are Twitter people. You may have noticed that George R.R. Martin, 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago, he just randomly started doing Targaryen Thursdays, I think is what he calls it. And he just does a spotlight on a Targaryen. Just a Twitter post, a picture of them, and then just like a couple of sentences about who that is. And this came seemingly from nowhere. He doesn't seem to be adding anything much new. And it's like, oh, well, where's that coming from? I have heard people suggesting that perhaps this is a countdown to him announcing something at the end of it. But it's going to be quite a long countdown if he does it like this, because he's going. I mean, we've not even reached Aegon, I don't think yet. The Conqueror. He's going right the way through lots of different Targaryens, so that's a long way away. If he were counting down, certainly to the book, then no. It's for him to have that amount of confidence. That's a very long lead in. So I don't think it is. I think it's just one of these things. George R. Martin has you can call it an adorable habit or an annoying habit of just getting sidetracked on things that he enjoys doing. And why not? He's allowed to.
Concur with Neil Gaiman's defense? I can't remember when he wrote this, but a couple of years ago, he basically said, look, everybody needs to relax and get off his case because he is giving you so much joy, as opposed to basically trying to extract from him these books that you think you are entitled to. Just appreciate the fact that you've had so many great reading experiences. And if you get more, great, but everybody just needs to relax and stop twisting his arm. And it's like, on one hand, I totally see where he's coming from. On the other hand, it's just frustrating when you see how the first 3 books were written in rapid succession, and obviously the next 2 books less so. But where do you fall on readers feeling entitled to the completion of series?
I am 100%. Neil Gaiman's the exact quote which he uses is George R.R. Martin is not your bitch, which I completely concur with. As I say, I love you. Obviously, I love A Song of Ice and Fire, and obviously, I'm desperate for the next book. But he's not there writing it for me. He is now at what, for an artist, which is what he is actually at an astonishing point that very few artists ever reach, which is that he now does not need to do art. He doesn't need it to earn money. He's got more money than he could ever have dreamed of having in his time. He doesn't need it for artistic credibility. Everybody already thinks he's great. He doesn't need to do the writing for any other reason than pure creation. And I personally think that is a fantastic place for him to be in. Yes, I desperately want him to be getting on with it, but it's his life. It's his creation. He can do with it as he wants to. And if he put down his pen right now and said, you know what, I'm actually not going to finish this. I'm just going to write about paddle steamers in whichever part of the deep south,
or whatever
exactly.
Yeah.
Then okay, I would be very, very annoyed and angry for a long time, but it's entirely within his rights, and that's up to him what he does with his time. Just picking up in the chat, Sasuke just saw Natasha Dimitriou's performance in What We Do in the Shadows is even better. I would agree. I just couldn't remember the actress's name, I have to say. But yes, it's excellent. Terra Incognita saying, cute, silly British sitcom Ghosts just got an American remake, which is also cute and silly. I don't know if Ghosts has come across to you
I'm unfamiliar with Ghosts. I as a general rule, I'm always resistant to American remakes of any European film or television. I'm just like, watch the original. I'll never forget when I was leaving positive reviews for Dark on my YouTube channel, someone saying, oh, well, I'll watch it when they finally do an English language remake. I was like, why not just watch the show that's good? Like, it's a great science fiction show. Watch Dark. But some people just do not like subtitles or even English accents. So anyway, I try to always watch great shows and movies where they originate. And so, yeah, if I watch Ghosts, I'll watch the original.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I'm with you completely. And the history of making American remakes of British TV shows is checkered, shall we say. In terms of Ghosts, it is fun. It's cute and silly. I think it's a very good description of it. The pitch is, again, it's not desperately original. The joy and beauty of it is in the acting and the dialogue and things like that. It's a young couple move into an ancient house, and then I think she has an accident or something, and she can see all the ghosts who are there, and he can't. That's the sort of the fun element, and these ghosts are all the way through history. So you get a caveman, you get somebody from the Victorian era, you get a politician who died recently. They've all got different, and it is fun, and it's very silly. I do enjoy it, and so yeah, do check that out. Let's go to question from. This is Lyle Hammock again, saying, Lord of the Rings will pass House of the Dragon in anticipation once we get a trailer of it. I admit I'm more of a Lord of the Rings fan. I'm still looking forward to both. I can't wait to see Ar-Pharazon, the king who burns people alive in order to try and get eternal life and worships Melkor. Also, what character are you most eager to see in the Lord of the Rings series? Well, just in terms of the anticipation, I think I agree with you completely in terms of Lord of the Rings. When they start doing this, it's going to be everywhere. They're going to Amazon are going to throw everything at this, and the hype train is going to build. So I've got absolutely no doubts about that. But I think we can handle two massive fantasy TV shows in the same year. I think I'm okay with that. I think everyone else is okay with that.
If we can have 9 Marvel shows and movies in a given year, we can have 2 massive fantasy shows in a year.
So I hope they're not going to be in competition. I'm absolutely 100% certain they're not going to be at the same time. I think that when Amazon said September the 2nd, 2022, that was just putting their flag in the ground, and everyone else is going to arrange themselves around it, because there is no way anyone's wanting.
Is this going to be the new Marvel versus DC kind of fan war?
I don't think so myself, because I think that you get DC and Marvel, people like one or the other, but what I've certainly found is that everyone who loves George R.R. Martin also loves Lord of the Rings, and I don't think that there's not maybe there will be in time between fandoms, but there's not a sort of a contention between them. Yes, there are occasional which is better, but it's not. Nobody just thinks the other one's rubbish. It's just they do love them both. But in terms of, Lyle was asking about characters, one of the wonderful things about this is that there aren't many characters that people will know. There are probably a couple. We'll certainly see Galadriel, I think, and Elrond. We may see the Blue Wizards, but
We'll see Gil-galad.
Yes, Isildur, but most of the characters we won't know about. Most of the characters will be either new or they will be characters who are name checked. Ar-Pharazon is
ring wraiths prior to becoming ring wraiths. That could be incredibly exciting, where the big cliffhanger can be when the first one succumbs to one of those rings.
Exactly, and this is actually, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one, because this is one of the possible elements that they will have going on. What are you? Is that what you're looking forward to? The interaction with Sauron and the rings?
Oh, bring on the dark side! Yeah, I want to see all the evil, all the doom and gloom. It's obviously used in small doses in Tolkien, which was what makes it so fun and special. But I've been wondering about the history of these characters. I mean, obviously in the appendices of Return of the King, you can read about the Witch King of Angmar, and it's fascinating stuff, but that's all Third Age. But the origins of the 9 ring wraiths, we basically know nothing. So the show can do whatever the hell they want, and no one can cry foul. So we'll see what they come up with.
Yeah, so I absolutely agree with this, and I think that we will see some of this. I think it's just too good for them not to include it. I'm personally really looking forward to seeing what we in the fandom are calling sexy Sauron, because this is before he takes on his horrific appearance. This is when he can take on a fine appearance.
Get Henry Cavill in there, yeah.
well, I mean, he's in everything else at the moment, so why
he
not?
Just put on his Witcher wig and be sexy Sauron.
Well, why not? He can pull it off, I'm sure. But he is Sauron is supposed to be a very charismatic figure, obviously, and he's supposed to be the kind that you can understand why people might be seduced by his honeyed words in their ears.
Even people who should know better, like Celebrimbor. I mean, you've got some elves who've been around the track a few times, and even they can't resist learning what he has to offer.
Yes, because he was the Anatar, the giver of gifts, the Lord of Gifts. That was how he presented himself originally. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to how they do Sauron, because he has to be the center of this. He has to be the heart of it. He has to be a character that we both love and hate at the same time. And we haven't yet, obviously, we haven't seen any pictures at all, so we don't even know what for 100%. Yes, there are set leaks and the like, but we don't know 100% who is playing Sauron even. So that's something. So there's so much mystery around this, but I'm really looking forward to it. And the Blue Wizards, if we get the chance, I would love to, because they're always
like 3 sentences about them. We know nothing, but now's an opportunity to play with them.
But they must be impressive and they must be good. But we don't know anything about them, so I would love to see that. That would be absolutely fantastic. Question from Reflective or Rambling, picking up. Thank you. I love it when you do this, picking up a question for someone else in the chat. This is for Mathieu Dominique. Have either of you watched Arcane on Netflix? Season 2 is happening in late 2023. Thoughts? I really recommend it. My favorite show of the year. I have not actually myself. I have heard excellent things about it, though. It's just not something I've picked up yet. James, do you know anything about Arcane?
I saw the first 2 episodes and was blown away by the production value. And I saw somebody very wisely pointing out in the comments earlier, when I said there are very few, if any, examples of great TV show or movie adaptations of games, someone very wisely pointed out Arcane, because that comes from League of Legends. I played League of Legends back when it first started, so I was more of a enjoyed it more as a gamer as opposed to as a viewer. But I think Arcane might have even been more popular than Squid Game. So runaway sensation, and people will be screaming for more. But I wouldn't count myself as one of the diehards, but as someone who loves animation, I was very impressed by the skill with which it was rendered. I didn't find the story to be as infectious as some of the real fanatics. Because for some people, it was the pop culture event of 2021 with no close second.
Yeah, and I've heard that from some people as well. There are people who avidly love this. It's not got big. which seems to suggest to me that perhaps it is quite a niche thing. But I've not watched it. I can't really comment yet. It is on my list. I've got it's a very long list, obviously, but it's on my list of things that I really should get around to watching at some point soon. But you've got the recommendation there from Mattia, so please do check it out. Lyle Hammock, thank you very much, saying, do you think we will see Pharazon's coup when he seizes the throne and forcibly weds his own first cousin in a very Targaryen move? It is a very Targaryen. So this is one of the bits of history we do know about. So the last king of Numenor was this guy called Ar-Pharazon, and he should not have succeeded to the throne. It should have gone to a woman, in fact, and basically he seizes the throne from her. He marries her, and then he just takes the throne. There are three. This is something Tolkien has dropped in just sort of in the background. There's so many things he sort of just drops in the background, that there were three female rulers of Numenor, and this was a part of how the sort of the succession went. And so this is a sign of where things have gone, is that this last king, he just ignores it. These are the rules of the land, and he is ignoring them. So will we see that? I think if we don't see that itself, then it will certainly be referenced, because this is an important part of understanding how this works. Basically, Ar-Pharazon, the king, he's this guy who is there, and he takes Sauron across and then starts becoming Sauron, turns him to the dark side, and so the heroes, such as we will find, people like Elendil and Isildur, they are the people. They're called the faithful. They are sticking with the old ways, but then everyone else, they're the king's men. They're the people who are following the king and going down his wicked ways. So yes, I'm very much looking forward to that. I think if I had to guess, yes, probably, but we still know so little about this.
Yeah, it all depends upon where they start their story, because there's so many points of entry where they could begin. I'm hoping they will start earlier, but who knows? It might be a show that's entirely in the last few years, and they refer back to some of the formative events, but we know nothing, so we'll just have to wait and see.
Yes. I think if I had to guess, yes. Sydney Rose saying, Happy New Year, gents. Happy New Year back to you. Special love to the mods. With all the fantasy and sci-fi films and shows manifesting, where does Dune rank? Oh, good question. So just in terms of 2022, just in case anyone was wondering, we're not going to get the next Dune movie in 2022. That's going to be in 2023. So we're not going to have anything new from there. But where does Dune rank in all of this? I'll throw it to James. I have some thoughts on this. I will throw it to James. I assume you liked the movie, but
I
got
it right up here.
You've got everything.
I keep pointing to the shelf, but Dune is very near and dear to me. I saw the Lynch flick at age 8 in the theater, was floored and bewildered, read the book in college, never fully recovered, read it many times since. Love the documentary Jodorowsky's Dune, really enjoyed the TV miniseries, and I enjoyed Denis Villeneuve's interpretation. Maybe it wasn't quite as fun as I was hoping it would be, but I was blown away by the scale, blown away by the complexity, blown away by the performances, dying to see what he does next. I think Denis Villeneuve has a small problem with giving the steak the sizzle that it needs to be, like a big giant crowd pleaser, something like Spider-Man No Way Home. Obviously, Denis Villeneuve is never going to make a movie like that. He's got a very different aesthetic, very different approach to filmmaking. So I was more impressed by the achievement as opposed to emotionally invested. I think I saw Dune 3 times this fall when it came out. So clearly I enjoyed it. And obviously he's a great deep reverence for the material. And I'm hoping that the sequel will include more about the Mentats. Obviously I'm hoping it'll include Fade Routha. There's a lot that I'm hoping that it'll include, but he probably is better equipped to make good Dune movies than any other filmmaker alive. So there's no one else out there. I'm like, oh, I wish they'd given it to so-and-so. No, Denis Villeneuve is the guy. And now we just got to wait and see what happens with the future of the franchise.
Yes, and I've got absolutely no doubts that the next one he makes will be the same standard as the first one. I thought it was an excellent movie. I think everyone else did. I don't think there's particularly groundbreaking thoughts on that. I mean, I have some nitpicks in terms of I felt that the pace and the tension just was too high for too long. It didn't ever sort of allow it to sort of drop and allow us to sort of catch. Bless you. Let's sort of catch our breaths with a few more human moments, but this is nitpicking.
Yeah, we need Patrick Stewart with a pug running into battle.
Yeah,
Long
where was
live
Patrick
the
Stewart with
fighters!
a pug? That's a callback to a previous movie. But the and the half-naked Sting. We need these things. But it was a great movie. Where I would place it, I think that was, in terms of the movies, that was the best sci-fi film of the year, easily. In terms of sort of like where it ranks in the pantheon of great sci-fi films, I'll talk about the books in a moment. I don't think it's quite up in the top tier of the kind of like the Blade Runner, 2001, Alien. For me, I think those kinds of things right up there, but certainly the next notch down. I thought it looked absolutely splendid. As a book, though, you can't get away from it. It's sort of the granddaddy of the sci fantasy genre, I would say. It's so well written. It's absolutely wonderful. So
endlessly rereadable again and again. But I guess in defense of the film, I just do love the fact that Warner Brothers, at a minimum, put in the money and took a risk on a subject that is complex in terms of the lore, the world. Most big budget movies are easily digestible. You can take a 5-year-old, they'll have no trouble following it. Finally, we saw a big budget film that had both high intellectual and artistic ambitions. And those were kind of movies that used to be made a lot, whether you're talking about Coppola and the Godfather films or David Lean and Lawrence of Arabia, big crowd pleasing entertainment that is at the same time complex and smart and challenging and placing demands on the audience. And I do like the fact that Dune placed more demands on the audience than your typical popcorn film.
I would agree with you completely, and I would watch that every day of the week over a typical popcorn film, as you would say. I thought it was fantastic. So yeah, absolutely right up there in my view. There is the potential, though, for it to get even better. Is where what I would say. The characters get more, no spoilers if you've not got there, but the characters get more complex, and the people you think might be wonderful might turn out not to be wonderful, and the people you think might not be wonderful might actually turn out to be.
And my favorite character hasn't even shown up yet, but yeah, Alia, she's coming, and the world is not prepared. So I hope they get her right.
Absolutely. Kelly Johnson in the chat just saying, will Jon ignite Lightbringer with the blood of Daenerys? I'll keep this one to this chat to the talking about things in 2022, if that's okay. But I will just very briefly say, if you're interested in that, I did a video years ago called something like "Will Jon Kill Daenerys," which sets out what I thought. This was before season 8, so this isn't based on books. This isn't based on show stuff. This is based on what I thought would happen. The books were saying, which sort of sets out a whole load of sort of the evidence around all of that. So I think short version is that I think that Jon killing Daenerys does seem to be the kind of thing that the books are pointing towards, not just the show. Okay, let's go to a question from... In fact, I think now I'm caught up on the super chats. Mods, if you saw me miss any of them while I was because I pushed them all back towards the second half of this, then do shout in the chat and I'll try and pick them up. Diego Godoy is saying, Hola, Robert, feliz año nuevo. Mispronounced, I'm sure, but straight back at you. Happy New Year to you. Regarding House of the Dragon, could you please give your overall guess on what each season will cover? Where do you see the first season ending? The death of King Viserys? ? Well, I think it's a good question, because they could go in a number of different ways with this. I think, for me, I'd love your thoughts in a moment, James, on this, but I think season 1, we talked about this a bit earlier, but for me, I think this is going to be the build-up to the Dance of the Dragons. I think everything we've seen in the trailers so far has been pre-Dance of the Dragons, and so maybe we'll have a little bit of it at the very end, but mostly I think season 1 is going to be the build-up. That the death of Viserys, if you're talking about a sort of a dramatic arc for a season, if you're doing the build-up to a war, the outbreak of it or the effective declaration of it is where you would end that season. So that makes a reasonable arc for me, and I could just see where it's the Green Council, it's called, when the king dies and they all sit there in the room and come to the decision, actually we want our guy to be king, not that one over there. That is a great point. They could make a fantastic end to a season just then, and that's the moment that they decide to go for it, having a huge build up. Shall we do this? This isn't right. I don't want that person to be in control. That works well for me. Then I think the end of it all, and I don't know how many seasons, they haven't announced how many seasons they're wanting for this, but the end of it all, I think we have to end with the crowning of Aegon III, effectively where Fire and Blood Part 1, which is what we have, ends up with, partly because that's as far as the story we have written.
They're going to run out of runway.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they'll be wary of going beyond that, given their history.
Let's roll the dice and make up more shit again. See
exactly. But also, that's the point at which we do get the story does end. The Dance of the Dragons clearly ends. We know what's happening now. There's no more changes in the who's king for a little while after that. So that's the logical point. That between that, I think your guess is as good as mine exactly where they do. It will be the dramatic beats of the dance. So, for example, you could certainly see the battle above the God's Eye Lake, where you get the dragons fighting, and you get our two great, basically the war leaders of each side fighting each other. That makes a really good point to sort of end a season. Maybe we could get the what's going on with the dragon seeds would make a nice sort of arc for a season as well. So there are a number of different points. Also, Blood and Cheese, if they can end it at the end of Blood and Cheese, that would be so. Again, we were talking about red wedding moments. That will be the red wedding moment for House of the Dragon. But what are your thoughts? How long do you think they're going to be going on for? And have you got any sort of feel on where they might go?
HBO would have run Game of Thrones longer if the showrunners had been interested. It wouldn't surprise me if they're hoping for 5 seasons, but would it be too slender or too thin if you, once again, I need to reread the book to figure out exactly where this falls. If you ended season 1 with the king who knelt, with basically just the unification, that like they've completed their conquest, or is there just not enough dramatic material there to fill an entire season just with the initial conquest, and then let everything else come in the subsequent seasons?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. HBO, they've got so many. My take at the moment, by the way, is that George R. R. Martin basically has hinted that he's got 8 projects on the go with HBO, so they've got lots of thgoing, and we haven't heard about all the different things.
And they're going to be making shows with his name above the title for decades after he pushes on to fantasy heaven. They're going to bleed that name dry if they have their way.
Absolutely. I think the intriguing bit for me will be when they go completely new. Actually, it is so. House of the Dragon is. We were talking about the challenges a little bit earlier. One of the other challenges is that when you take, say, Game of Thrones season 1, that was one book.
Yep.
Pretty accurately just put over into one season.
They nailed it.
10 episodes. They're almost scene for scene. You can't ever do exactly scene for scene, but almost scene for scene. One book, one season. What we've got here is part of a book that they want to make into, say, 5 seasons. So they've got huge amounts of gaps there. But the kinds of things that we know they're talking about, like the voyages of Corlys Velaryon or the 10,000 ships and Nymeria, those things we have literally a couple of pages on. So
you can make a season out of this, Night of 7 Kingdoms. All the Dunk and Egg stories, but that would make a great standalone season.
My take on that is what I would like is the way that if you ever watched Sherlock, which I'm sure you did, when they just made a season of 3 episodes and each episode was maybe film length, like 90 minutes or something like that.
That would be amazing.
That
you could
for
totally
me would work perfectly. I think because those stories are so beloved, Dunk and Egg stories are so beloved, I don't want them to stretch them out. I don't want them to do anything. I just want them to make them into little standalone things and not do anything else outside of that. But whether, as I say, the challenge will come when they're trying to adapt something completely that we don't have much about.
Yeah.
The voyages of Corlys Velaryon, he goes to places that we've never been to. We don't know anything. What's in the Basilisk Isles? Who knows what's in the
Or a
Basilisk
show
Isles?
about Bran the Builder. It's like, all right, well, we know very little. So you're going to, once again, have to just invent it entirely.
Yes.
And that's the danger zone.
And my take at the time when they decided not to go with the sort of the long night, which they got a pilot for, this was a couple of years ago, and instead went with House of the Dragon, was that they just went risk averse, and they thought we could go for what probably was going to be quite a risky, different thing. No characters, a different world. King's Landing doesn't exist. Who are the Starks? What's going on? We don't know anything here. Or we could do Targaryens on dragons. They're going to go for the one that they know people like. So I think they're starting off with what they're pretty sure people will enjoy, and then they'll start trying to expand out from that.
Somebody very clever out there is going to recognize that with Joe Abercrombie and the 9 novels he's written so far, I wouldn't say that it would be a Game of Thrones level success, but it's 9 really good fantasy books. You've got 9 amazing seasons of TV, and he is a former film editor. Bring him on as a producer, let him run it. I think that's a home run show in the making.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are lots of, I mean, if we're going fantasy books we love covered, I still think, and Robin Hobb's Farseer series, the Assassin's Apprentice, they would be amazing. Why nobody's bought that yet?
Yeah, like instead of HBO making entire shows out of a single line of history from a George R.R. Martin book, it's like there are other fantasy authors out there who have written great stuff, and they are ready to be adapted.
Or the Dragonbone Chair series, there are many fantastic new stuff. I mean, these are things back from the 80s and 90s still. But
yeah, I like Mark Lawrence's Prince of Thorns series, which is probably way too savage too hot for television, but that's a good trilogy of books.
Excellent. Well, yeah. So if you're watching live, do drop into the chat what you think they should be making TV shows of. Question from Kelly Johnson saying, will Mushroom prove his Rhaenyra claims true? So yeah, this is what we were talking about a little bit earlier, when what we've got in terms of the mechanism George R. R. Martin used for writing Fire and Blood is that this is a number of different accounts. Mushroom, who we've not had confirmation that we're going to have in this. I so want, if I had to pick one character I desperately want to see Mushroom, is that character. He's fantastic. He's effectively the court jester. He's a dwarf, but he's got this kind of Tyrion-ish element to him, but at the same time he wrote his history about what happened during that time, and it's lurid. Everybody's just doing everything illicit and tawdry all the time, and some of it was probably true, but some of it probably wasn't true. Are we going to find out that Mushroom's allegations are right? Probably some of them, but probably some of them are just going to be left to our imagination, I would have thought. Let's go to now. I've struggled with this name last time, I'm afraid, but I will try my best. It's Jetarista, which I think is Polish. Happy New Year to you. What is your view of the Witcher and Wheel of Time adaptations? On Wheel of Time, my general impression that most changes of the books were creating more compelling story for visual medium. I enjoyed it more than the source material so far. My feelings for The Witcher are mixed. I can see many improvements to the previous season, like bigger budget, etc. But the main issues are the changes to the book's plot. Sometimes they work quite well, sometimes they do not. I think we've talked through that one a little bit earlier, so hopefully you'll take that as a sort of an answer to that. But in terms of what you're saying here, you say Arcane was also on Netflix. We've talked about that a little bit more, and you would happily check what Netflix could do with the likes of Cyberpunk, Magic the Gathering, or Zack Snyder's series Twilight of the Gods and Army of the Dead. The anthology from Tim Miller and David Fincher, Love, Death and Robots, will return with its third season in 2022. Do
I
you know
really
Love,
enjoy Love, Death, and Robots, and one of the main screenwriters came on my YouTube channel a few months ago because I was interviewing him about this movie, Spine of Night, which I referenced earlier, but he was one of the screenwriters on Spine of Night. But great guy, and also, as we were talking about earlier about tabletop gaming, he is an avid tabletop gamer as well. So yeah, Love, Death, and Robots, huge thumbs up, especially the first collection, which I thought was a little stronger.
Yep. So I don't know anything about that, but I would take that recommendation.
If you like a little sex in your sci-fi and animation, definitely check out Love, Death, and Robots.
It's one of those, is it? It's like the early seasons of Game of Thrones before.
Yeah, or more like
very prudish.
1981's heavy metal.
Okay. Well, there we go. Maura Lee, I think I've picked up your questions over on Patreon. I think I've picked up on most of these already. In terms of season 1 of Wheel of Time, you were asking if there are any episodes that stood out most to me or characters. What I will say just on the Wheel of Time is that I thought the middle bit worked the best for me. I thought that's where it kind of picked up. The first 2 or 3 episodes, they had to introduce us to a lot of stuff, quite fast-paced and good, and I enjoyed them. But at the same time, it was really once we got out of the 2 rivers and once we started seeing the characters. I do love the books, but for me, the characters that I enjoy the most are not the Emmons Fielders. I tend to find them a little more sort of earnest and on the dull side a lot of the time. I have to say it's the surrounding cast that works best for me. Moiraine obviously is fantastic character as Lan. Tom Merrilin, I was very excited to see Tom Merrilin there. He wasn't exactly as I imagine him from the books, but I think that they did a very good take on him there. And loyal as well. It's the surrounding cast of characters that work really well, I think, in that. And so when they started coming in, for me, that's when it started to gain a little bit more life. And also the Aes Sedai. When you get Leandrin, I've forgotten the name of the actress who plays her. I think she did an absolutely amazing job there. Just this sense of threat all the way through, which I thought worked really well. But that was it. And then it's sort of the last episode or 2 didn't quite work for me, but I thought that the middle chunk, yes, that was it. Was there anything in terms of sort of the episodes? Where did you kind of buy into it or not? I mean, I know you said you preferred the books.
I faded on the show early on, and because like I said, I don't want to vomit poison onto the internet. I'm just going to defer to your comments, and I'll just say that Robert Jordan was a big part of my childhood, and I don't know if I'll ever be totally on board with the show, but I'll continue to watch from a safe distance. And if at some point I fall in love with it, no one will be more vocal online for celebrating it. But I don't want to bash something that a lot of people so clearly are loving all the way. So.
Well, I absolutely respect that. I mean, this is a thing I've always said on my channel, is that I will only talk about things I personally enjoy. If I stop enjoying watching or reading something, then I'm not gonna.
It just makes you feel good. I mean, it's on one hand, it's good to be rigorous and critical, but if you're gonna run a channel, it helps to have a few things that you love and adore, just to kind of create like kind of the soul of your channel.
Yeah, absolutely. So even if I think things aren't perfect, then if I'm enjoying it, that's the bar. And so far, everything I've been covering, I have definitely been enjoying. So thankfully, fingers crossed, it's not going to happen again going forward. Kate Fleetwood, thank you very much, Sasakaja, for that's the name. I thought she did an excellent job. Right, and reflective rambling saying, with fandoms there is no such thing as a safe distance.
That's fair.
Wise.
I like that. I might steal that expression moving forward.
Well, excellent. Okay, I think with that, actually, I've come to an end of my questions from my patrons, so I'll quickly dip into. Now is the best time if you want to drop any more questions into the chat. I will try and pick up as many as we can. Matthew Dominique saying, would you consider having a stream discussing your thoughts on the Wheel of Time season 1, maybe with guests? Yeah, I would consider doing that. I made a decision with the Wheel of Time. I wasn't going to cover it in depth, so I've done an introductory video to it. So if you don't know anything about the world at all, then I did an introduction to the world of the Wheel of Time. I'm keeping
Daniel
an open mind.
Green probably has 600 or 700 videos on Wheel of Time for people who are looking for Wheel of Time content. I know he's one of your rivals in terms of followers and subject matter.
There are no rivals in this.
Yeah, but Daniel Green, he might be the biggest Wheel of Time fan that I'm aware of. Both, I mean, he's been covering the books for years. He's religious, and he did breakdowns of every single episode. So he definitely is a great resource for diehard Wheel of Time fans.
Yes, and I very briefly met him, actually, just enough to say hello. I don't think he knew who I was, actually, which is fantastic. But yeah, he's got a great channel there.
And he's transitioning to being a novelist. I think he spent so much time breaking down great fantasy books. He's devoting the next few months to taking a crack at his own. So I wish him luck.
Excellent. Yes. Just on your first point, though, is to say, this is something I personally believe very strongly. Is that the way that YouTube works, and this is if you are starting out, if anyone's starting out on YouTube, I highly, highly, highly recommend you get away from the idea of competitors. Is that this works when you work with other people, when you work in collaboration, it actually helps everyone else. So this is not a matter of different if he does well, then that's taking people away from me, or if I do well.
Yeah, it's not a zero-sum game. A rising tide lifts all boats.
Exactly. This is a positive-sum game. So when James does well, hopefully one of my videos will appear next to his on that kind of recommended thing, and people will come across here, and vice versa. But just in terms of the Wheel of Time, other YouTubers that I would personally recommend, the Dusty Wheel. If you've never come across the Dusty Wheel, he's kind of the hub of a huge amount of this. He's got a fantastic podcast, YouTube channel. Unraveling the Pattern, I've recently discovered, excellent if you want slightly more in-depth looking at what's going on in the books and also on the TV show. And I also met Nay Bliss, who's got a channel, who's as well as coming across as an incredibly lovely man, is very, very tall, which is and he's a good person. Do check out his channel too. So there are lots of excellent channels there covering the Wheel of Time. In terms of my channel, yeah, I would happily do that if I get the time. What I'd love to do a bit more of actually on this channel is pre-recorded chats, that's not just live streams, but just sort of getting people on just at whatever time people can come on, pre-record a chat for an hour or so. I used to do it quite a lot, and I think it's just a really good way of sort of working our way through a subject. So yeah, definitely I would be interested in doing that kind of thing. Let's have a quick look through any other questions. Andrew K saying, I haven't seen it yet, but did you or James see Foundation? Oh yeah, good question. The reception was divisive, though the visuals and the budget seemed stratospheric.
I'm going to keep pulling things off my shelf, but I love Foundation. I love the first 3 books. I did not get sucked into the show, but I have some friends whose taste I appreciate who got really into it. They had not read the novels, but I about halfway through the first episode, I was like, I don't know if this is going to be my show or not. But I love the fact that Apple is taking a crack at such a beloved property. And something tells me 10 years from now, Apple, Amazon, and Netflix are all still going to be going very strong. And pretty much every great fantasy or sci-fi book that's ever been written over the last 120 years, they're all going to get adapted sooner or later. So we'll see. Some good stuff is going to emerge on those 3 platforms as long as they keep making these attempts at such a legendary series.
Yeah, so I also love the books. I haven't watched any of the TV show. It's on, so I've not got Apple TV, which is the main reason. And they've not yet, I don't know, off on a digression here, but I don't know what everyone else is like on these kind of
You're not watching
platforms.
Ted Lasso? Come on.
Well, that's the thing. So when you get a platform and you think, do I want to buy into this, and you think, well, what have they got? And so Ted Lasso looks great. I thought, okay, maybe I'll do that, but I'm not going to pay for it just to get this one thing. Then Foundation, I think I need one more that looks really good for me to be sort of.
I've not watched it, but For All Mankind, which is going to have its season 3 coming soon, I keep hearing that it's the best science fiction show in the world that nobody is watching. But everybody keeps saying For All Mankind is like the thinking person's sci-fi show. For whatever reason, nobody talks about it. Nobody watches it. But those who do are like, what do we have to do to get more people on board? So anyway, I will get on board for All Mankind before season 3 rolls around because I've been putting it off for too long.
Excellent. Okay, well, For All Mankind, recommendation there.
Yeah.
Let me know if there's anyone else in chat who has watched it. It's something that's sort of out there that I've heard of, but I know nothing about this.
It's like an alternative history of the space race.
Oh, okay, excellent. Lyle Hammock saying, I think we'll get a Lord of the Rings trailer during the Super Bowl when you can get maximum exposure. Do you guys agree? Yeah, possibly. I think they will have been working out a plan for this that is going to be at least a 6-month plan. I think that the Wheel of Time is probably a good gauge of how Amazon are going to go about doing this, because they put a lot of effort into working with the fandom and also trying to raise awareness of Wheel of Time over a long period of time. And they've obviously been very happy with the results, with people tuning in, watching the Wheel of Time. So I think they will probably copy that across. And if that's the case, then I think that we will see a very, very long series of drip, drip, drip. We'll have a picture here. We'll have a teaser trailer there. We'll have something else. A trailer, I mean, I don't know... this is you'll forgive my lack of knowledge of when American sporting events happen. I don't know when the Super Bowl is. When is the Super Bowl? Roughly.
I believe it's mid-February, but of all the subjects on this earth that I know the least about, American football is a strong contender. Even though I come from a family where football is like their first and only religion, I'm like the one, person, the one person who's unconverted, usually like mid-February, but somebody in the chat's going to know better than I.
Someone in the chat, I'm sure will. But in terms of timing, so I think what I'm saying is I don't think it's going to be a full trailer. So February all the way through to September, I think it's entirely possible. I can remember sometime, I think Westworld Season 2, they did a Super Bowl trailer for, which was quite big news at the time. I think we might get a teaser trailer then. I think that you're right. That is probably the biggest way of trying to get a wide audience engaged with this, but I don't think they're going to give us a full trailer until probably July or something. I mean,
think back to like 20 years ago, or 21 years ago, that first teaser for Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings was so damn good. It was so brief, and it just gave us almost nothing. But the moment I saw it, I was like under its spell. I was like, oh my God, this is actually like going to be not only like good, but like really good. They did it. They pulled it off. It's one of the best teaser experiences I've ever had, that first exposure to Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah. And if they get it right, then they have spending everything and taking all the time they need. And this is Lord of the Rings. I mean, we started out Lord of the Rings quite early on, but we have to keep on coming back to this. I don't think you can underestimate how much Amazon are throwing at this. The just post-production is ridiculous, because they finished filming it and then they announced when they're going to be releasing it. Now, for most TV shows, you might get 4-5 months post-production for really high demand stuff that's got very complicated. You get stuff like maybe The Witcher, which had a huge amount of CGI, or the later seasons of Game of Thrones, and maybe 7 months, something like that. This is 13 months of post-production they're putting into this. This is huge amounts, and it's only 8 episodes. It's not like they've got a hugely long season. So they're throwing absolutely everything, and they're going to make sure that they get this right. So, there will be...
if they don't get it right, somebody's going to write a very successful book chronicling how it all went wrong.
Well, I mean, I'm not the kind of person who has a pessimistic mindset, but you could already start to see some cracks there. There's been a lot of things. You've got one of the actors left. They had Tom Shippey on board, who's an eminent Tolkien scholar, who then left again quite early. You had people coming in and then going away again. They changed the entire place that they're filming it. It was based in New Zealand, and then they've upped sticks and they've moved to Scotland for season 2. There's everything there is like, hang on a minute, what's going on here? But everything we've heard so far is that it's pretty amazing. So we have to wait and see. But yeah, they are definitely throwing absolutely everything at it. Reflective Rambling saying, if James doesn't have a bookshelf tour on his channel, I desperately need it now. So there you go. That's your next
I would
video.
love to do a bookshelf tour. I would have to do a video per quadrant because I've got all kinds of stuff. But yeah, it's something I've been meaning to do for years. I just haven't gotten around to it. But thank you for the encouragement.
Excellent. Carl Karsnark pointing out that money doesn't always equal quality. The Lord of the Rings movies had famously small budget for what they did. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, money does not equal quality. I think from where I am at the moment, the one thing I can guarantee, I think, is that it's going to look amazing. I think that is... It's in New Zealand, which always looks amazing. The budget they've got for CGI is astonishing, so it's going to look fantastic. If there's nothing else, then and that one picture that we've had, that did look beautiful. So I'm confident it will look amazing. Whether the plot, whether the acting is there, I'm sure it will be, but I've got no reason to think it won't. But I can't yet say anything on that. So hey Robert, I sent a super chat, but you might have missed it. I was just asking as a light joke, when did you come to accept that Winds of Winter will never be coming out? I did miss that one. I'm very sorry there, Arky, but I have not come to accept that the Winds of Winter is not coming out. This is a thing. It's coming out, guys. It's going to happen. Whether it's this year, I don't know. I've given up predicting. I used to.
Will it come out without the intervention of another author?
I think so. I mean, he is writing it. It is going to be a massive.
I've heard
book.
It's like 1,500 pages. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I did a video. How big will it be? And that I concluded, I think 1,600 pages, just based purely on what I thought it was probably going to have to contain. But it will be broken down into at least 2 physical books. Of that, I'm absolutely sure. He is writing it all the time. It's getting closer. So yeah, I'm not gonna ever.
You're not throwing in the towel yet.
No. And the other thing I should probably say, as I sort of said, what I'm covering on the channel this year. Obviously, if the Winds of Winter happens, I didn't want to say it at the time, but obviously, if it happens, then I will be making lots of videos about the Winds of Winter. I haven't figured out how to not do the spoilers thing, but what I can tell you, I've already decided. I've set aside a little bit of money already. I'm going to take myself off to a hotel room for 2 days, 3 days, whatever it takes, and I will just read it. That's all I'm going to do is just read that book. I'm going to take no calls. I'm going to make sure that somebody can walk down. I'm just going to focus in on reading, and
that's what I did when Fire and Blood came out. I was just so starved for George R.R. Martin material that I just got on the couch and got soaked in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'll probably read it and listen at the same time. I don't know. I just have every kind of version of it going on at once. Reflective Rambling again. Thank you very much. Saying, do we know if we're getting season 3 of C? Terribly underrated, in my opinion, in 2022. Since James likes anime and Vikings, Vinland Saga season 2 coming home. These things mean very little to me. Do you know C?
I saw the first season, which I enjoyed. I have no explanation as to why I did not watch season 2, but for whatever reason I did not. But I did enjoy season 1, and sadly I have no news or scoops. But it's Jason Momoa being Jason Momoa, and I don't know how Apple decides what gets made or what doesn't, because obviously their shows are not what drives Apple. It's basically just icing on the cake for when you buy their devices. So they could probably make that show at a loss indefinitely. It's a $3 trillion company now. So once again, their decision-making process, who knows how Apple goes about deciding what gets the green light, but it wouldn't surprise me at all. As long as somebody's watching it, it wouldn't surprise me if they keep making it.
Absolutely. That's good. I'm very pleased to hear that. Andrew Kay joining the debate about the Winds of Winter, saying, I feel like it's coming out this year. Seems like it's nearly done and makes the most sense after House of the Dragon.
I used to check like every week for years, and I gave up checking for a long time ago. And I checked for like R. Scott Bakker to see, and I've seen no new news on his next book in a long time. And yeah, I just try to focus on books that are available. That's why I like Joe Abercrombie. Every September, it's a new book. Rain or shine, doesn't matter. as regular as clockwork. He has a book a year, and on the whole, they're fantastic. And so those are the kinds of authors that I try to get addicted to.
Well, that's a good idea. One of my favorite Twitter accounts is one that's simply called "Is the Winds of Winter Out Yet?" and just posts every now and then just with one word, no. And I think I think as a Twitter account, I'm just waiting. I'm following that simply for that day when, and I hope there's no more drama than just a yes, and that's it. And then I'll be very happy for whoever owns that Twitter account.
My mind will melt.
In terms of checking on George R. R. Martin, he has said, when it is done, he is going to announce it. This is something that he's just been very clear. He said, ignore all the other noise around there. Anyone else saying it's done, it's this, is that. He will personally do it, probably on his Not a blog. He does, incidentally, roughly every year do sort of an update on how it's going. So I'm sort of like refreshing a page on that one every now and then, just to see whether he does do one of them this year. I hope he does. Certainly last time he did one, it was very positive. So hopefully we'll get some more positive news out of it. Okay, I think with that we are coming to the end here. Let's just quickly say, in terms of what I'm going to be doing in terms of the live streams going forward, we're going to have our usual mix of A Song of Ice and Fire and Lord of the Rings. The A Song of Ice and Fire ones, I'm going to start focusing in on House of the Dragon. So we're going to be having, I did a character study of Daemon Targaryen last time. I'm going to move through a few of those characters that we're going to be seeing on the TV show, characters that were there in the Dance of the Dragons. So that's what we're going to be focusing on for the next few weeks there. Lord of the Rings, I haven't decided yet what we're going to be doing for the Lord of the Rings ones, but as before, what I'm trying to do is bring in content creators to who you may not know, who do excellent content in the world of Tolkien. So that will be, again, a sort of a monthly thing with a Tolkien live stream. James, why don't you let us know what's coming up on your channel and remind people where they can find you in the big wide world.
I have the podcast Wrong Reel, which, like I said, it's primarily film history. So if you like the deep dive into filmmakers like Billy Wilder, go to wrongreel.com. And if you just want reactions to the latest shows and movies, then yeah, Geeking with James Hancock. And I just can't thank you enough for inviting me on the channel. Your audience, they are my kind of people in terms of their love of the shows, the books, the movies, the games, etc. You've clearly cultivated a very well-informed audience, and I've had just an absolute blast getting to interact with them for this nearly 3-hour podcast. This has been a proper marathon, but it's just flown by. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. And I would absolutely echo that. My subscribers and patrons and people who watch this channel are the most intelligent and beautiful people in the entire world. This is just a fact. Thank you so much. Please do check out James's podcast and channel. I put a link to the channel down in the description if you want to go and check that one out. I'll make you disappear for just 1 second so I can point at things. If you are watching this back a little bit later, then appearing somewhere around here will be a link to some other live streams if you want to watch them. Appearing somewhere around here will be a link to my Patreon. Patreon is the best way. If you wish to support this channel, that is the best way to do that. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much again, James. Thank you for everyone in the chat. Moderators, thank you. You are amazing. Take care, everyone, and I will see you again next time.